Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Friday Nightmares podcast, episode 9. I can't believe we're almost to our big milestone of 10 episodes. Um, but I am your host, Scott Crawford, recording from his basement in Swartz Creek, Michigan. And with me, as always, is my lovely co-host.
From the north, Heather Powell, recording from Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on this beautiful, warm June day, and 9 episodes in. Are we at the same amount for Podcast by the Cemetery yet?
One more episode, and we will be there.
What about Horror Drunks, which is both, this was Scott's previous life. These were the podcasts that he rolled with.
Yep, the Horror Drunks, we actually got into the 20s.
Did you? Well,
Yeah,
hopefully
we were putting out content quite a bit for a while there.
Nice. Well, you probably drank a lot when you did it, so that probably was a good reason to get together.
Yeah, sure did.
Anyway, happy to be at episode number 9 with you, Scott. Yeah, it's been an interesting ride, and hopefully this choo-choo train keeps going. We keep coming up with new concepts, and we keep modifying our show, and I think we've learned a lot. I was actually listening to one of our past episodes because I like to listen to clips just to figure out how I can improve and what I can do better as a podcaster. And I even from episode 3 to now, we've come a long way.
Oh, we have. Like I think the whole like us learning how to record online together after COVID happened and putting out content more often because we were at the point we were just doing once a month.
Mm-hmm.
So us putting content out every 2 weeks now, I think it's just the practice has really helped, and we've learned a lot, and we listen to other shows too, so we like pick up on ideas from them too.
Yeah, absolutely. You're 100% right. We really have beginning to hone our craft a little bit more. You had a lot more experience than I did coming into this, mind you. I'm still a newbie, but I think I've done pretty good. It's going to be a year, just over a year now that I've been podcasting. So.
Yeah, and you've come a long way and done amazing. So, and I will have to say, like, I was more with the other podcasts. They were movie review stuff. So doing the whole research and theme ideas now instead of like actually reviewing movies, that took some getting used to for me. Like I wasn't used to that type of deal, and I feel like I've gotten better as we've progressed as well.
Yeah, I think it's a tough thing, but we needed to do something different because I agreed with another podcaster said once there's too many podcasts, and I think if everyone just keeps reviewing movies, as we talked about before, there's people that already do it very well, and I think it's important to be different. I think it's important to bring a different flair to things, and for however long this ride goes for, we're going to definitely enjoy it and live every moment of it and keep watching these 2020 films because our watch list is climbing.
Oh my gosh, we can talk about it already, but I have already surpassed the amount of new watches that I did last year. And last year was my record, which was 50 2019 horror films. And now I'm at 64 already, and it's not even halfway through the year yet.
It's funny. I only watched, I think, 25 movies last year that were 2020 films. And up to that point...
2019?
2025. Yeah, I went ahead in the future. But when I think about the 25 films I watched, they were all theatrical releases. None of them... No, that's not true. A couple were Netflix. So I watched The Perfection, and I think there was another one I watched that was Velvet Buzzsaw that was on Netflix as well.
Yep, and then Lords of Chaos and The Nightingale.
Oh yeah, yes, so those. But that was more or less because I met you and you kind of exposed me to those. Like I don't think I would have watched them or even heard about them, to be honest with you, otherwise. Now I watch a lot more international films, a lot of French films, Spanish films. I watched my first Arabic film this week as well.
Same here.
Yeah, which was fucking phenomenal. What a great film.
Yeah, we'll get
into that.
Yeah, very shortly here.
Yeah. So, it's nice, and it has really broadened my perspective and knowledge, and I still would never cut up somebody if they don't do that. I think that's their jam, and you do you. But for me, the growth that I've gotten from it and being able to understand what goes into making a movie, I have so much more appreciation. Like it really just helps open up your eyes to everything that's out there.
It absolutely does. And yeah, just with the especially the volume of movies that we have watched in this year, like I already had an appreciation for a lot of this stuff beforehand because I've seen quite a bit of movies through
Mm-hmm.
podcasting and just on my own. But like now I'm going and trying to find films I've either missed out on or things that I've like just been curious about and just throw it on now and have no qualms. And now I'm just like learning more and more than I thought I would.
Absolutely, right? No, it's been good, and I think that's a good thing about 2020 because I think it's very easy to shit all over 2020, and it's been a rough go. Um, and I think the only thing that I would like to share with my Americans brothers and sisters is that I think it's great. Certain things have come to light this week or the last week that has been going on for over 200 years. And I
Yep.
think it's very important more than anything that everybody enacts their voices this November and votes. I think if we want to see real change, you need to be the real change, and it comes from more than just sharing on social media, and it comes from more from just talking about it. It comes to action. So,
Yep.
I'm hopeful for my American friends that they all go out and vote for. Do you guys still have primaries? Is that still happening?
Yep.
Okay.
The Michigan already had their primaries.
Okay. So for any states that have remaining primaries, and then is it because we don't have primaries in Canada, we just have like a voting day and you go and vote. But what would be November considered for the presidential election? Is that just called the presidential election?
I think so, yes. I
Okay.
think that's the actual term.
Okay. So, hopefully everyone exercise that right, and we can be the change that we're advocating with our lips, with our actions.
Yep, because I will be there as soon as the ballot doors are open.
Oh, good for you. I'm always pleased when I hear people voting across everywhere because it's a privilege to vote in a democratic
it is.
society, right? So that's very exciting. So that's I think that's all we're going to say on that, and we're just going to get into movies. Unless you wanted to add anything, Scott.
No, I think we can just jump right into the what we've been watching segment.
Excellent. So I think the first movie I'm seeing on our list here, I know the first movie I'm seeing on the list here is 122, which is available on Netflix. Or I guess 122, I guess you could say, 122. And it is an Arabic horror film, kind of like a slasher. And I loved this film. I don't have my letterbox in front of me, but I think it's number 3 for me right now.
Yeah, I think that's what you told me it was.
Yeah. And what a wild ride from start to finish. And there's the one actor in it, one of the doctors looks really familiar to me. Like, I feel like I've seen him in other stuff, and I looked him up, and I didn't really recognize any of the films that he was a main actor in, but maybe he had some side roles in American films that I've seen him in. But wow, like what a fast-paced, great slasher-like movie. What did you think?
Oh, I had a blast with this one. Because you watched it first and then told me you need to see this like as soon as you can. So I think it was that exact same night I jumped on and checked it out, and yeah, I didn't know what to expect. I read no synopsis. You didn't really tell me much about it, like just accept that it was really good. And so I went in completely blind and just had a fun time with this film. Like I was really impressed with the acting, especially from the two main leads. Like you really felt for them, and like you were, their chemistry together really worked well, and everything that goes on between the two of them and the stuff they have to deal with, like yeah, really, really well made film, and like you said, it's like pretty much from start to finish nonstop.
Yeah, and like even there's some scenes in it that are really suspenseful. Like I found that I couldn't look away. And yeah, like it's a slasher, so there's some parts where you have to suspend your disbelief, right? Like you kind of got to be like, okay, like if I'm willing to accept this in Friday the 13th, I should be willing to accept this in this film.
Yeah, because there was one thing that I brought up, and you're like, you said that exact same thing, and I'm like, yep, that's pretty much how I feel about it. I was just kind of curious.
Yeah, because like really, if I think when you watch a slasher, you kind of look at it and you go, obviously those are choices on steroids or ridiculous plot points that are thrown in to kind of make the flow work. And it made the flow work. Like at the end of the day, it made the flow work, right? So, and really good special effects, like really, really well made. So it's on Netflix. It's a free watch. It's a 2020 watch. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. Check it out.
Yep, same here. Got the Friday Nightmares podcast stamp of approval.
Absolutely.
Then yeah, the next one, also another one that you told me about, and like I I may have to let you talk about this one more because I know
Mhm.
your love for this one, but that is Miss Serial Killer from 2020, and this was a Hindi film, right?
Yes, it is. It's a Hindi film.
Yeah. So what were your thoughts on this?
Well, I really enjoyed it. It's not your typical Bollywood film. I did watch another one called Psycho that is very Bollywood. It's 2.5 hours long, and there's some singing and very much a Bollywood love story in it. It's well done, but this one is definitely more westernized. So if you want to watch something that has more of a Western flavor with some South Asian references in it, it's a really, really good movie, especially like what I loved is that they had a pop-up wedding chapel in it,
Oh
and
yeah.
they had which I thought was actually a Sikh ceremony, but I don't think they were speaking Punjabi because I actually do speak some Punjabi. I took Punjabi classes because my ex-husband was South Asian, so I can pick up, and there's some similar words in Hindi, but they're wearing red, and red is the color that brides wear. Um,
Okay.
on their wedding day in the South Asian culture. So anyway, I thought that was really cool. That was, that's a little bit of a spoiler, but it's not, you don't know who's getting married, but there's a pop-up chapel in it, which I thought was really cool that they kind of pulled that kind of like running away and getting married together.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I loved it. I thought the special effects were great. There's some great twists in it. The main character is awesome. I think she's got some real acting chops. There's some funny ass scenes in it. There's
Oh
some
my
great
gosh. Yeah.
dialogue in it. Very modern. There and it reflects South Asian culture today. And I like that. I think as someone who probably has a little bit more knowledge of South Asian culture than other people that are white, simply just because of the time I spent within people from that culture and being married to someone from that culture and who's been to India. It's definitely more reflective of what India is like now, not I think not like what we think it is, right? So
Right.
I really like that about it. What did you think? Did you think the kills were cool? What was your jam?
Yeah, this once again was one of those where you're just like, you need to see this. And you told me, like, watch this one before I watch Psycho, just so I can
Yeah.
kind of get a taste of what it's like before I jump into, like, the more Bollywood one. Um, and yeah, I really enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun. It's not as high for me as it is for you, obviously, like, for different reasons, but, like, I just had a blast with this. For one, I did not expect the comedy in this at all.
Oh yeah, there's some good comedy.
And oh my gosh, there were lines in this that just made me laugh my ass off. Like I was not expecting it and just kind of slapped me in the face out of nowhere. And yeah, just a really fun movie, really cool story. The interactions between the main girl and the other girl in the group in the movie, like just funny as hell.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
and yeah, I think we were talking to Brandon from Exploding Heads, and I agree with him that this deserves a sequel. Like, I would love to see a sequel to this.
Absolutely. And it goes to show you that like South Asian films can be edgy. There's a lot of swearing and stuff in this. Like
Yeah.
there's some language that's used and they talk about some really like sexualized things. And I'm really glad that they did that. And yes, I definitely do have a connection to the South Asian culture and an understanding. And there was definitely some stuff in there that if you didn't understand the South Asian culture, you weren't going to get it.
Right.
There was some winks to the audience for obviously people that are South Asian watching it, but it was great, and it's on Netflix. Like out of some of the shit we paid for, like I would have paid for these two films, both 122 and Miss Serial Killer, any day of the week over some of the other crap that we've rented
Oh,
and paid for. Oh my god!
absolutely.
Like talk about a difference. So I guess I'll move on to the next. Also on Netflix, Dangerous Lies. It's it's a 2020 film. Um, it's like a Lifetime movie. If you like Lifetime movies a lot and you want a decent little like bubblegum, like real bubblegum watch, it's fine. But I think for serious horror fans, they're not going to enjoy this. It reminds me so much of the movie that came out last year, and I can't remember the name of it, but this woman is in an accident and she goes to the hospital and like her husband comes to get her, but it's not really her husband. She has amnesia and she can't remember who her husband
Hmm.
is. and he takes her back to to the house that he's broke into that her and her husband lived in, and like so ridiculous. Anyway, it reminded me a lot of that. So it's a very like Lifetime movie. So I guess if you know somebody who is a lighthearted horror fan, maybe, but it's not even that strong of a horror movie. It's kind of just there, and I watched it because it was on Netflix and free. Um, but yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on it. Have you seen any of those like that like Open House or something like it was similar like Open House on Netflix? Scott, did you ever see
no,
that?
but I never did see that one, and like I've heard like people talk about that, and yeah, this sounds kind of like that along the lines of that film.
Yeah, and that husband, I think it was like something like The Perfect Husband or something like that. Like it was just, it's very, it's very like Lifetime. I feel like I'm watching the Hallmark Channel only with a little bit of horror sprinkled into it. So anyway, I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, I'll say, and you get movies like that when like when especially on Netflix.
Yeah, and you know, it wasn't poorly made or anything like that. It's just the plot was so basic bitch. Like it was like, you know, this couple inherits this house because this woman's a housekeeper for this dude and he dies mysteriously and they're trying to figure out if, you know, her husband murdered him or not. Like I know I'm giving a lot away, but that's because I don't recommend watching it. Like it's like a total like soap opera, turn off your brain film. I don't know. I wouldn't even recommend it to anyone that we know. I really wouldn't. Like I don't know, maybe somebody's wife who, you know, sounds sexist, but me who needs to watch like I don't know, something kind of horror-ish, maybe they'll like it, but yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like one I will just not bother watching.
Yeah, I wouldn't bother. Just skip over it. There's other things you could watch.
Yeah, that's my plan.
Right.
You did the hard work for me.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
So yeah, I guess the next one we can talk about. Once again, I'll bring up his name because he recommended this. But Brandon Orlick from Exploding Heads talked about this movie called The Droving, and you and I both decided to watch this. I think just a couple days ago, actually.
Yeah, I think I watched it on Thursday or Wednesday or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and this was a pretty damn good movie. Like, once again, this is a popular theme that's been going on for the last couple years, but it deals with cults. And so if you're into cult films, I think you'll have more appreciation for it.
Yeah.
But like, I thought this was a just really well done story that had me hooked from the very beginning, and like I couldn't tear myself away from it.
Yeah, I agree. Great dialogue, and I hate cults. I hate cult films usually because I find them annoying and overdone.
Yeah, but that's why I was saying like if there's more of appreciation if you love it, because I knew like what you thought of them.
But this movie does it really well, you know,
It does.
and you know, we're not giving anything away. You find out about cults within the first like 2 minutes of the movie. Like this isn't like, oh, you find out it's a cult later on. Like you find it out within the first like 2 minutes of the movie. But
Right.
the dialogue and the character development is quite good. Not a lot of special effects, but the special effects that they had were very good, very well done, the practical effects. And yeah, more than anything, just really good character development, very good writing, very good flow. Like it's how you create a slow burn that builds tension without having all the flashing bells and whistles. And
Yes.
I really reflect a film that can do that. But you do have to like slow burns. You do have to like character development, a lot of it. And I think, yeah, if you dig the whole cult concept, you may like it a little bit more. It's pretty high on my list. I think it's 15 or 14. So, you know, I've given it pretty high kudos out of 67 films because of the quality of it. Like it's a good film, and you can't take anything away from that.
Yeah, because I think it's like just right outside of my top 10, like at my number 11 or number 12. Like,
Yeah, it's
I
a good
really
movie.
dug it. And yeah, like this one you talked about last episode, so I'll just bring this one up real quick because I finally watched it, and that is Get In from 2020, the French Netflix horror film. And wow, were you freaking right? This movie was awesome. Like one thing I will bring up that I picked up from this that I really liked was the show of how masculinity can be portrayed.
Yes.
And
yes.
like what someone will go through because of the pressures of trying to be more masculine and man up type deal.
Yes. That's a really good point, Scott.
And damn, was this just a all-around amazing movie. It's very bizarre. It has some very sexualized scenes,
Mm-hmm.
has some really good gore,
Mm-hmm.
and I would put this up there with a lot of the what do they call it, the French extreme films that have come out like
Mm-hmm.
over the years. And yeah, this is a high recommend for me. I think it's like my number 5 right now.
This film for me, well, it's my number one, and it will take a lot to knock it out. Like, I don't think I think Candyman would have been the only thing that would have
Yeah.
even given it a run for its money, for my preference. Yet again, for my preference. Um, I think this will be my number one at the end of this year. I have nothing but good things to say about this movie. There was nothing I thought they could have done differently. But then again, it spoke the Heather language.
Yep.
You
And it's
know,
and it's with me like one of those films where the more I sit with it, the higher it may go up on my list too. Because like this one, I watched it I think sometime last week, and like I still remember like the whole entire movie. Which for me, I have a short-term memory loss situation when it comes to movies. I'll watch them and then certain films will just fade out of memory real fast and be like, "What the hell was that movie even about?"
mhm.
And this one stuck with me. So like by the end of the year, like that's going to be a way I kind of portray my list too, is like films that still resonate with me even though I hadn't watched them in several months.
Absolutely, and I think that is a good way to look at it, right? And I may do rewatches at the end of the year, but I'm not a big rewatch person. Like, if I know
Right.
something's my number one or that high, it's going to be that high.
Right.
Like, to be
Exactly.
honest with you, where I have a hard time is not in my top 15. It's after that. It's like,
Yep.
well, is this like a 23 or a 22? But really, at that point, like, it doesn't really matter.
Right. Exactly. Like
You
at that
know?
point, like it's like unless you're gonna like just share the entire list like in just on Facebook or something like that, or we decide to talk about everything we watched, then maybe it'd matter a little more. But right now, it's like
Well, and like, who cares what I thought was 45 or 47 out of
right,
like 67, right? Obviously, if it's in the 40s and I think it's a 47 or 47 or 45, who cares? Like, that doesn't, to me, that's not something that you need to rush out and watch.
right,
If I'm
exactly.
saying to you, this is in my top 10 or my top 15, and these movies are really solid, then I'm going to stand behind that.
Yep.
And that's going to be how I'm going to feel for the rest of the year. Like, I personally don't care what someone's like after their top 15. I don't care.
Yeah,
Like, whatever,
exactly.
right? Like, whatever you think, and that's fine. It doesn't, numbers don't matter to me at that point. But Sea Fever was another one that we watched. This is not on Netflix. This is a VOD.
Yep.
Yeah, great film. Really, really great film. Really well done, well acted. It's an Irish film, I believe.
Yep.
They're from Ireland. So a little bit of thick accents. They were talking about this for Horror for Dummies a couple weeks ago, and I would agree, thick accents, but like I didn't have any difficulties understanding them. But some great acting, like to the point where I got angry at certain characters. And
Yes, you did.
we've talked about this before. If a character can, bring anger or emotion from you, that's the sign of a good actor.
Yep, and I completely agree. And this movie was one that I'd heard, through the grapevine of the podcasting community and things, and got me really excited to see it. And yeah, this film did not disappoint. Like, I love the claustrophobia of them just being stranded on this boat out in the middle of the ocean. And then the whole paranoia and like mistrust that happens along the lines of the thing.
Yes, very much so. Only in a boat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And man, like it had a very Lovecraft feel to it to me, like to an extent, like with the madness and all that stuff that goes on.
Yeah.
But man, like the effects in this were really freaking good too and very gory. Um and yeah, like just the story in general and just the way everything happens, like just it was a Scott movie through and through. Like
Absolutely. It's a great film. It wasn't as high for me, I think, but it's in my top 10. Like, how could it not be?
yeah,
The acting in it alone is phenomenal, and the subtleness of the ethical dilemmas that run through the film, and connecting to modern to really what's happening now too, with stuff that's happening around the world. It was really well done. Like, it was a really, really good film, and not super high budget. Yet again, like, not a blockbuster in the sense of like, oh, look at all this money we pumped into it, but a film that just used their set and their actors and what they had well. They
Yeah.
just used it well, and the writing was good. And I'm beginning to wonder if movies like Get In, Sea Fever, if it's that writing that really and the droving that really kind of just narrows it down, having good writers that
Yeah,
can write a
this
good script.
yeah, because the screenwriting is very, very important to a lot of this. Because yeah, like if you can't invest in the characters and like what is going on, then you're not going to enjoy it nearly as much.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's worth the rental. So there's some that we listed off that are free on Netflix and Netflix Canada and the United States. But this one is definitely worth the money. If you're interested in renting it, I definitely recommend it.
Yep, and this one can be rented on Amazon Prime for the US.
And it can be rented on Google Play as well as iTunes.
Nice. The one other one that you and I both ended up watching was The Siren from 2020, which is
Yeah.
an exclusive on Shudder.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this one could have pretty much tied into our theme for our episode today, but I didn't want to get into spoilers with this one because it's so
Yeah.
new. But it's pretty much about a cursed woman that ends up being a siren, and like she ends up uh, pretty much just like not being able to control her urges when she wants to, and just there wasn't a lot of big characters to this one. It was just a very small cast.
Mm-hmm.
But man, was this really well done as well. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was very impressed with this. Like I'm also a fan of like mythological monsters and stuff like that, and sirens are known for luring guys out and drowning them and stuff like that. So I right off the bat knew I was gonna like this one to an extent just because of that theme.
Absolutely. It's cool. I like that it was in a lake too and not in an ocean,
Yeah,
which I really thought was kind of cool. And yeah, I would agree with you. The character development was really well done. There was some suspenseful scenes that are subtle, but I had to look away because I couldn't handle the suspense of what was going to happen. It caused me a level of anxiety. And yet again, that's a good sign of a director, of a scriptwriter, of actors, when they can invoke emotions from you. Really, when you feel something during a film or during a TV show or a play, that's a sign of something that's solid. Yeah, so it's on Shudder, so you do have to pay for Shudder for it, but it's worth the watch.
yeah, and yeah, I guess we can move on to the last 2020 watch, which is something you watched, and I gotta
Yeah,
check out.
yeah, and I put this on my list. I don't think that I really would count it as a horror movie because it's a documentary, and I do put those in a different category. But Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street, it talks about Nightmare on Elm Street 2, and oh my gosh, I forgot the character.
Is his name Jesse? I think.
Jesse, but
And
it's
Mark
not
Patton.
Mark Patton. Thank you. Oh my goodness, I just had a complete like. It's all that partying from last night. Anyway, Mark Patton, and he does a really good job talking about his experiences with the aftermath of Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street. Talks a lot about his experience as a gay man in Hollywood, particularly in the 80s and 90s with HIV and AIDS. A lot of lack of education or understanding of HIV and AIDS, which results in prejudice and discrimination. So he talks about that. He talks about confronting the screenwriter about how it was written. That there was always this belief that Mark Patton made it gayer, quote unquote, but it was written with obviously some scenes in it. To be honest with you, when I first saw Nightmare on Elm Street 2, I was one of those people that I didn't pick up on any of that.
Nope, neither
I
did
didn't.
I.
I was just like, oh yeah, they're at a like, I guess that may be a gay bar. Like I didn't even think about it. I didn't think about some of the lines of like, she wants to sleep with you or you're here with me or whatever the case was. I never thought about like Freddie was his own internal struggle with demons about his sexuality. Like, I never read into that any at all. I just thought the coach was like creepy pervert
Right.
that like was trying to molest Jesse. Like I didn't read into that. It was only when I heard people talk about it that I went, oh yeah. Oh yeah, I guess I see that. Yeah. So you know what? I guess there's just some people out there that are more aware of that and others that are not. And I fall into that area of others that are not. But it's a really good documentary. I think it takes a lot of courage to talk about any kind of experience. The fact that he was sick for a long time, the fact that he's back doing these conventions, the fact that he's now owning the role and owning the impact that it's had on gentlemen that identify as homosexual, and almost like that he's given them a voice. And to me, that is the most inspiring thing that someone can do, is they can be that role model or that voice of, this person got out of this situation, I can get out of this situation. This
Right.
person's proud to be gay, bi, trans, whatever. I can be proud to be gay. And that's huge. You know, as a heterosexual white woman, I don't understand that, and I never will.
Right.
And it's inspiring to me to hear other stories so I can learn and appreciate and empathize. Never fully get. I will never get it, but I can at least empathize and learn, and that's the most important thing.
Absolutely. And yeah, this is one that I am definitely planning on watching probably like this weekend or next week. Like, yeah, because I was, my personal opinions with part two when I'd seen it, like, this is young Scott talking because I haven't watched it in a very, very long time, but I wasn't really that big of a fan of it. And
Mm,
like you, I didn't catch on to a lot of the homosexual themes in it and things like that. I just seen it as another Nightmare on Elm Street movie.
yeah.
And but I wasn't the biggest fan of this one. But I, after hearing everything about it, like over the years, and then this documentary coming out, I want to watch this, and then at some point, I will rewatch part two, and I bet you I will have a much bigger, broader respect for that film.
You know what's funny? I actually really like part two. I like all of them. But and like a lot of people shit on that pool scene. I thought that pool scene was sick.
Yeah, that was one of like that.
Like,
That scene is awesome.
yeah, and I thought like where he corners Jesse in the hallway, and he, you got the body, I got the brains. Like I thought there were some fucking killer lines from that film. But I'm a big Nightmare fan. I like all the Nightmares. So with part 6 being one of the toughest ones to get through, but I can still
Hmm.
enjoy it when I watch it. So yeah, anyway, I think it's just, and they talk a lot about HIV and AIDS in that, and it still blows my mind how lack of knowledge people have of HIV and AIDS. Like
Yeah,
how it's transmitted in 2020. Um yeah, it's interesting. And I'll just leave it at that. I think
yeah.
that we still have a long way to go, and I think events have proven in the past several years for lots of different things that we don't have a good understanding of history in our countries,
No, we do not.
and why things have occurred and how we've got to this point, or even how diseases are transferred. So hopefully people continue to educate themselves, and this is a great documentary in order to do that, and just learning about yet again more about the movie industry and what was going on at that time.
Yeah, that I will definitely be watching this, and then I will bring it back up on our next episode and give my thoughts on it as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, then I guess we can jump into our list of older films. We did watch a bunch more, but a lot of those are going to be tied for our theme, so we're just going to bring those up in our main topic. But I will talk about one that I've always been curious about because I love the cover art for it, and that is The Unnamable from 1988. And this is a Lovecraft story. So, of course, Scott had to go and watch it.
It's a 10 out of 10 just because it's
Um,
Lovecraft.
Damn near, I think it was a 9 out of 10 that I
Oh,
rated.
see, of course.
I loved this movie. Like, this one didn't have to do with like a lot of the like madness inducing stuff that Lovecraft is known for. This one is more just like a very creepy ass monster. It's a monster movie.
Mm,
And man, this film just was absolutely enthralling to me. Total 80s monster film. The monster practical effects looked incredible. I was blown away by the way it looked and the way it sounded, just like the way it screeches and everything just sounded had shivers running up my spine. Like, this is one of those movies that if you haven't seen it, I highly, highly, highly recommend watching this one. Like, I
nice.
had such a blast with this movie.
Now, do you highly recommend Heather watches this one?
Yes, because I know you do love your monster movies and creature movies and stuff like that, and that is more what this is.
It's not. It's not too Lovecraft.
No, no, because
Okay.
I'll give you a quick synopsis. College students check out a haunted house where in the 1800s an ugly monster called the Unnamable is trapped in a vault and accidentally gets released.
What's my ex doing there? Just kidding.
Wow.
Just kidding. I'm just being funny. Anyway, yeah, that sounds interesting and sounds, I don't know, I've never even heard of it, but that doesn't mean anything.
It's one of those where when I would go to video stores, I'd always see the cover, but never pull the trigger on watching it.
Do you remember when you go to video stores and you get the videos? I don't know if your video stores had this, but it was plastic cases, and you would have to like squeeze it and like
Yes.
shake the video out. And then you get so mad if someone didn't rewind it, and you'd be like, "Fuck!" The VCR, or they had the separate like rewind machines.
Yeah.
You would get the separate rewind machine because it was believed that rewinding too much would wear out your VCR. I don't even know if that was true or not, but I just remember, like, if people were like doing well, they had a separate rewind machine and a VCR.
Yep, and my grandparents had 2 separate rewind machines plus 2 VCRs, so they were fancy.
They were fancy, huh?
Yeah.
Very, very nice.
So yeah, what would be the next one you want to talk about?
Oh, you keep going. Why don't you keep going?
Okay.
All yours are here. You just keep going on your roll, Scott.
All right, I will do that. So the next one I decided to watch is a slasher film from 1981 that I have heard so much about throughout the years and finally decided to check it out, and that is Final Exam.
What a great slasher. I love that slasher.
That was a really fun movie, and like a lot of films from the early 80s, definitely has some stuff that you cannot be getting away with now in films.
Oh my goodness, like the opening, is it the school shooting prank that they pull in that one?
Yeah,
right?
the guys pulling up in a van and
Oh
jumping
my
out and just starting
God.
to pretend to shoot everybody, and just so a guy can get out of an exam.
Oh my goodness, right?
Like, I was watching that going, what the hell is going on?
Things that would not happen today. Definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But yeah, I like that slasher. I think it's I really have a soft spot for 80s cheesy slashers, no matter how bad they are.
Yep, same
I like
here.
Fatal Games and shit like that too. I find it funny. I find these like ridiculous kills hilarious. Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it because I'm a big fan.
Yeah, this is one that I definitely recommend if you're a fan of any of 80s slashers and you haven't seen this, definitely give it a watch because, yeah, it's definitely a time capsule and just a fun movie. It's a bit of a slower slasher than most, but like, the characters in it are what keep you entertained.
In all fairness, I found that a lot. Like if you watch the original My Bloody Valentine, it's not quick.
No,
like,
it is not.
Slashers weren't quick. Neither was Prom Night. Like
no, there's the ones that are like pretty much fast paced, and then there's like the slow ones. Like,
what would you consider a flash-paced 80s slasher? Honestly,
I would probably say like Friday the 13th Part 2 and 4.
Okay, sure. But those are sequels. I'm talking about originals.
Oh, originals. The Burning.
Like it's not fast-paced. Like there's a lot of character development until you get the kill with the prostitute at the beginning.
Yeah, that is very true because that is more like an 80s sex comedy for a little while.
Yeah, like I don't think, and I'm not cutting up 80s slashers, don't get me wrong. I just don't think that they were like, and I even remember with like some of the ones I watched, like Slumber Party Massacre, and there was Sorority, the one where she gets Hell Night. Yeah, she gets locked in the like for a prank or an overnight, like the initiation, her and this dude and someone else have to stay in that house. Like it's a slow build.
That is true. Yeah. Like now I'm thinking back on it. Yeah. I think a lot of those 80s slashers that were not like franchises were slow builds. Cause I think that's what I was basing it on was like the 80s franchise slash.
Yeah. Like of course, absolutely. You look at sequels, they're a little more quicker, but if we look at the original Friday the 13th,
yeah, that was
a slow burn. Like if you were to sit down a 12-year-old today, of course, depending on the 12-year-old, and be like, oh man, there's this great slasher. It's called Friday the 13th. It's really, really fun. They'd be like, bored for 45 minutes. They'd be like, so when shit going down, right? Like, right. And the kills aren't as like, graphic or whatever as we have today, but like, it's an interesting concept that people will be like, oh, I don't like burns. I don't like slow burns, but I love 1980 slashers. And you're like, well,
it's like, well, you may want to rethink that a bit.
Like they're not necessarily like speedy out of the gate, right? I just think it's interesting.
Yeah. That's a good point because I never even thought of that way before. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
They just do. They're good at building and that's important. Like you need to, and whether it's Terror Train where it's the nerd that got humiliated, or Prom Night where he saw his sister get killed. Like I know we're giving spoilers here, but hopefully people have seen these pretty classic slasher films
Right.
from the 80s. Like it does build up to that. Like if you just had like what Scream did, with that right out of the gate really intense opening scene.
Yep.
All the Screams did that. Every single one, it was an intense opening scene, and then it tended to go more like this. Except for 3. I think 3 does a lot more of this before it gets there, but 1 had a lot of jumps.
Just for the listeners, you're moving your hands up and down like a wave. And then...
Yeah, I don't know why Scott is like the scribe video for me right now, I guess. But yeah, like it's like it's interesting. I just think it's a fascinating thing that a lot of the original slashers definitely were more about some plot development going on, so you cared about the characters. Like you had to have some kind of investment. Like really, we cared about Drew Barrymore because it was Drew Barrymore.
Right.
Right? Like you see Drew Barrymore get killed in the first 5 minutes of a film, you're like, holy fuck, anything can happen.
Right,
but that's because it was Drew Barrymore. Right? Like if she had been some random blonde chick that they had pulled, no one would have given a shit, right? Like they would have been like, all right, well, some chick's dead. That was really smart. It was smart on Wes Craven. I think that's a really interesting. Anyway, who knew that talking about Final Exam would get me on this like tangent? But I just think it was an interesting thing to bring up. So
yeah, I'll say I'm glad we did. That was a good conversation, and opened my eyes to something I never really thought of.
I know I'm just really smart, Scott. You should just.
You so smart, Heather.
Listen to me the entire time.
I do.
That's really what it is. It's just me educating Scott for.
Yeah. What we're doing is we're recording a show that is a Heather solo cast, and I'm just the listener that's agreeing with her.
That's funny.
But we could jump on to the next 2 movies that I watched, which you brought up last episode, and that was 13 and 14 Cameras from 2015 and 2018. I was partway through 13 Cameras when you had watched it, and these were pretty good films. That guy is extremely gross and creepy, and that builds up a lot of tension with that first film.
Mm-hmm.
The second film just goes a little bananas with some of the things it decides to bring in, what was it? The time jump does not make sense for certain characters.
Yeah, it does get a little dicey, but like
I'll say they're still fun watches.
It's a total like, oh shit, this made money. We should make a sequel.
Yep, exactly. But these were both on Netflix, and I highly recommend them. I don't need to say much more because Heather did a great job talking about them last week. I just wanted to, mention that I had seen them, and that I also thought they were very enjoyable. Just the first one is better. The second one is a little less, but also recommend watching them almost like back to back.
Yeah, I think back to back's a good idea. It allows it makes a little more sense, right? Like as much sense as these 2 movies can make together, but
right. And then I have one more that I will bring up that was from 1980, and that is He Knows You're Alone.
Oh yeah.
Recommended by Miss Powell herself.
Yeah, because I like 80s slashers.
And wow. I'm glad you brought this one up because this was a lot of freaking fun as well, and also kind of sort of in a way ties into the urban legend theme. Like, but this is a very fun slasher and a first appearance of Tom Hanks briefly.
Yep. He has like a little minor role in it. Really, like his role is pointless.
Yeah, it literally is. There's no reason for it.
Like he just kind of showed up and was like there, but that's fine. We all need to get our start somewhere.
Exactly. And I'm going to read the quick synopsis, but a young bride-to-be is being stalked upon by a serial killer in Staten Island. She gets help from a former lover, but will they manage to escape? And this was just another all-around fun slasher film that I somehow never knew about for the longest time. I think actually I didn't hear about it till you told me about it. And I am glad I watched this. This one was a very fun movie, and I highly recommend any slasher fans check this out if they haven't seen it.
So if this was a Horrors for Dummy episode, you would be
I would be the dummy.
Just kidding.
I mean, I am always the dummy anyway, so.
But yeah, so Scott can do a describe video for me. I'm gonna do a pretend shot of what the woman looks like with the phone. Basically just opened my eyes super wide and like gave this odd face, because that's what the cover is, right? I think this is a slow movie, you know, like it's actually I think one of the slower movies from the 80s, but I love it. I think it's great. I think it's great build, and you know, it's really, really entertaining. So I'm glad you dug it. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, I'll say I think you and I have both learned each other's tastes fairly well throughout our time working together and knowing each other. So I think like you can recommend movies to me and know that I will like it, or you're just at least curious on my thoughts on it. Same, and vice versa with me to you.
Well, or I like telling you that you're wrong.
Yeah, you do like to do that too.
I'm such a bully. People listen to the show, they probably think I'm a nice person.
If only you've seen our real conversation.
Yeah, I'm nice enough. We'll put it that way. I'm nice enough. So you can chime in with this one, my friend, because you were involved in the Kickstarter, I think.
Yes.
Never Hike Alone. It's a fan film.
Yes, a Friday the 13th fan film. This is how a low-budget Friday the 13th sequel can be done right.
Yeah, like what a good movie. And so Rebecca from In the Mic of Madness is interviewing the director on the next episode with Venom. And I think that's awesome. Like I think she's a badass chick. She's cool. But yeah, like what a great film, and great plot, like simple character development, and I thought there was some reasoning behind the naming of the characters at the end, the ambulance drivers and stuff, like Tommy and something like that. Like, well, yeah, because they were tying it into the other movies.
Yeah, because the guy that was the ambulance driver is Tommy Jarvis in Part 6.
Oh, that's who it was. I thought so.
That's Tom Matthews.
So. I thought so. Yeah. So I was like, I thought that was funny. I thought that was really clever, actually.
Like a nice tie back. I thought it was really awesome how they brought it back in like that, and even brought Tom Matthews back for that role.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. And it's only about an hour long, but it's perfect. You know, it's a perfect length for that movie, and it's really, really well done. Yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I don't know where it was filmed. Do you know where it was filmed?
I could probably look that up real quick, but yeah, I was gonna say, when this first came out, it came out on Friday the 13th, and it was instantly available on YouTube, like for free. That's how they promoted it, and that's how I watched it for the first time, and that was before I did the Kickstarter. I ended up doing the Kickstarter for the
Never Hike Alone, or Don't Hike in the Snow, or something like that.
I can't remember the title of that one, but no, the Kickstarter I invested in was for the Blu-ray of Never Hike Alone, because they hadn't made copies yet.
Okay.
But yeah, this was me, I'm a huge Friday the 13th fanboy, and like I wasn't sure what to expect from this, and man, I was really impressed how they filmed it. The person that got to play Jason was really imposing and intimidating.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love this movie, and like it's one of those now, like on Friday the 13th, I will watch this with like the actual franchise movies.
Yeah, it was great. It was nice to see people do a fan film and really breathe some good life into the. Heck, I liked it better than I like some of the other Friday the 13th, to be quite honest with you.
It's same here.
Like I would probably rank it higher than some of them. So
yeah, in the sequel. Film. Yeah, it's because I would definitely say it's better than pretty much everything after Part 7 for sure.
Yeah, like I'm not a big fan of Jason Goes to Hell. I'm not. I don't think it's a horrible movie, and I don't shit on it, but I'm not a big fan of it. I find it boring.
Yeah.
I prefer if someone said Never Hike Alone or Jason Goes to Hell, I'd be Never Hike Alone.
Yep. It's old school slasher style.
Well, and I just find it more entertaining, to be honest with you. And I find the flows better. And, I was never a big fan of Jason hopping from body to body. Yet again, if that's your jam, like, knock your socks off. I just thought that it was stupid. And
it was just a weird redheaded stepchild of the franchise.
Well, and you know what? There's some people that love it, and that's fine. To me, it didn't fit with me. Doesn't mean it's a bad movie. It just means it didn't fit with me. Like, I don't mind Jason Goes to Space or Jason X. I thought it was silly, but I figured at that point they're just so desperate to make movies and try to get whatever money they can out of it. Like it was, it was just there.
Right.
So it was nice to see something, and I like the remake. I like the 2000
Yep, so do I.
remake. But yeah, this was great. So I'm looking forward to their sequel or follow up to this.
Yep, and I looked up the sequel name, and it's Never Hike Alone, Never Hike in the Snow.
Oh yeah, so people have always wanted a snow Jason, so this is going to be, every fan's dream come true.
Right, exactly. And I tried looking up where it was filmed, and I couldn't find any information. So
yeah, just curious. It looked like it was filmed at a camp or whatever. So
yeah.
The other one I watched was Rogue, 2007. It's an Aussie film about a killer crocodile. Yeah, it was fine. It was okay. I was really worried about the dog throughout it.
I knew you would be. Well, I have never seen the movie, but I knew there was a dog in it.
Yeah, there's a dog in it. The CG is 2007, which is fine. That's it is what it is. There's some very much like roll your eyes, like okay, but it's for entertainment to watch a creature feature and just watch a crocodile like fuck people up. Not a bad watch.
Yeah, that's kind of like along the lines of how I felt about Blackwater.
Yeah, like it's not the worst crocodile movie I've ever seen, and I would prefer like Placid more. I would.
Okay.
That's me. I'm sure there's people out there like, no, Rogue's better, and that's fine. There was parts of it that I was like, nah, just didn't do it for me. There's parts of like Placid too that don't do it for me either. I just find that one more comical and parts of it really funny and
same here.
Right?
I mean, it's got Betty White in it too, so that's just awesome.
Betty White's such a badass.
She is.
Hell House, good film, excellent movie. Was thinking of using it for our Urban Legends section because we're talking about urban legends. I don't know if Scott talked about that.
Yeah, I don't think I actually brought that up. I want to make that.
See, Scott's a bad host. He has to describe what I'm doing, but he can't remember our topic. So we're talking about urban legends today. Poor Scott. He's going to be looking for a new host with him after episode 10. But so Hell House was going to be on the list there, but I didn't feel like I could talk about it as much as I wanted to the theme I wanted to use, but very, very good film. Very good found footage film. Makes found footage look good. I'll put it that way.
Nice.
Worth the watch. Have you seen it?
No, this is one that's on the list of first-time watches that I got to check out at some point.
Yeah, it's good. It's an entertaining film. It's safe for work, to be honest with you. It's nothing super inappropriate.
Right.
But it is definitely a ghost story. So you got to be down with like creepy shit happening and maybe some jump scares. So
nice. Yeah, I'll have to check this one out soon. I'm sure I'm getting to that point where I'm just like, all right, I'm just kind of scrolling through Shudder now and just kind of clicking on movies I've never seen before.
That's what you got to do, and don't think too much about it, Scott. Just go with your heart.
Well, I just got to make sure that it's in English because I can't watch it at work if it's
truth. Truth. So back to found footage. Let's go back in time to the Blair Witch Project. I don't think this was the first found footage movie, but I remember this being highly promoted as a found footage movie. Like I remember when it came out, the promotion behind it, it's based on a true, it's actually real. Like you had some people believing that it actually happened, and
if the fake documentary they made before this came out, like
right.
Oh man,
right.
Like, that is probably the thing that I will say about this movie. Like, I'm not a fan of the Blair Witch Project itself, but all of the hype building up to it and the promoting is probably some of the best I have ever done. Like they've created like missing posters for all the people in the movies.
Yeah.
And websites for you trying to like find them and stuff like that. Like, man, they did a great job with that.
Especially for 1999, and I think it's important that we remember that this was made in 1999.
Yeah.
Because it's 2020. So this babe is 21 years old.
Which is crazy to me.
Which is crazy. And I remember the first time I watched this, I made out with my boyfriend.
So not much watching.
This is like most of it was like me making out with my boyfriend. Anyway, so I didn't really watch the whole movie. Tells you how interested I was at the time. So now as I didn't make out with anybody. I managed to sit through this whole entire film.
I am so proud of you, Heather. Like, wow.
I didn't pull people off the street and was like, hey, you want to watch a movie? I'm just kidding.
I'm so proud of you. That's an achievement right there.
I just managed to sit through a film. So, yeah, not a bad movie. Not a bad movie. I think it would have had more impact in 1999 if I had actually watched it and paid attention to it. I feel like now, with all the other films that have come out, it gets overshadowed. I found, so there's some spoilers here. Like one of the chicks' name, like the main chick, is like Heather, right? So like they're yelling at Heather the entire time, and I'm like, man, this Heather chick is a bitch. Like, what's like, yeah, she's kind of like really fucked them over here. Like, so throughout it, I kept thinking like, yeah, I'd be mad too. Like, they have every kind of right to be pissed off right now because she's kind of like screwed them.
Right.
Right. So, but well made. Yet again, they probably didn't have much money when they made that film. Like, it was probably some pretty bare, basic bitch budget.
It was extremely low budget, and then kind of like Paranormal Activity out of nowhere, just like made a shit ton in the box office.
Yeah, like, and like that whole like where she reverses the camera and talks into it. I'm so scared right now. Like, it was good to finally see that full scene. I'd only seen real parodies of it and stuff like that, so it was great to see it. I'm glad I watched it and actually sat down and watched it and had the attention span for it. But I think it would have I had the attention span now to sit through it. But I think I would have had more of an impact from it if I had seen it in 1999. Well,
yep.
Actually watched it in 1999.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah.
Because this is one that I ended up, I was telling the story where I watched. My stepdad worked for a video distribution company, so he'd like stock the shelves at rental places and stuff like that of the new movies. And after a new release, has been out for a while, they have to take out some of the movies because, they'll bring in like 10 or 12 of one movie just because it's a new release. So we want to rent it to everybody. And after a while, they only need like 2 copies of it. So my stepdad would always bring home the duplicates. And, they also, at this company, they also got screeners. So he brought home a screener VHS of this. And I was watching it and just like, okay, this movie's, it's all right. And then it got to the third act and it just went black and said, if you want to find out what happens next, go and pre-order the movie. I'm going, fuck you. I am not doing this because
little angry teenager Scott was like, you don't tell me what to do.
Screw you. This movie wasn't. I am not going to sit through this crap again to get to this third act. So I'm not renting this or buying this. Yeah.
Maybe I can imagine you just being super mad at like 17 and.
Oh, I was so.
Oh my god.
So yeah, since then I have not even bothered rewatching it. Like eventually I may, because I never did technically finish it, so I could, I guess, count it as a first time watch. But
yeah, that's what I did. Because I don't remember anything from it. Right. And honestly, I think as a horror fan, you should watch it. I think what it's done for the genre, I think the following that it has, respect.
Oh, for sure.
I think it's one of those movies where I would say to someone, if you're a hardcore horror fan, you should watch The Blair Witch Project. And I say that now after watching it and being like, yeah, it may not have the impact for you now that it would have had for you back in 1999, just because the world is a different place. But I think that it's definitely has its piece in horror history. And I have a lot of respect for the people that made that film, the marketing behind it. The acting was decent. It's a decent film. It just didn't, it didn't impact on me except for the fact that I was like, Heather, you're an idiot. And you've screwed these 2 dudes. and that was probably what I took away most from the film.
Yep, I can see that.
Right. The only 2 other films I'll go over quickly are Netflix films. One is called Escape, and it's Escape Room, I think, or it's Escape. It came out in 2017, and at first I'm like, Escape. This looks like a really shitty Netflix movie. No, it's actually really good. It's based on a group of like very well-off people who go to an escape room, and shit goes down, and it's not a happy ending. It's not like the escape room that came out before where like shit goes down, but there's a quasi-happy ending. No, there's no happy ending. This is not a happy ending. So it's very interesting. I would say for Netflix for free, I enjoyed it better than Dangerous Lies. It's something that if you had some people over and you were like, oh, they're a fair weather horror fan, I would throw this on. Like,
Okay.
it would be edgy enough that you could be entertained as like maybe a more advanced horror fan, but for somebody who maybe doesn't like a lot of horror, it moves smoothly enough.
Okay.
A movie that's on Prime that looks like shit from the cover of the movie art, but is not shit, is 247 Degrees. I think it's just Degrees, yes.
Yeah, you were telling me about this one.
Came out in 2011. Taylor Scout Compton, is that how you say her name?
Yep.
Is in it, along with the dude that played the blonde asshole in Friday the 13th, the remake, 2009.
Nice.
The guy that owned the cottage or whatever it was they were saying.
Yeah.
Man, that dude has some acting chops.
Does he really?
Like, he has some acting chops. He was really good in this. And I also have a soft spot for him because if you watch Camp Crystal Lake Memories, he talks about how much he valued his time as in that role, and he talks about how much it meant to him and how he like is appreciated that people recognize him from that movie. Like, he's not a douchebag.
Right.
Like, he's actually seems like a really nice dude, but he looks like a douchebag. It's kind of interesting, right?
He looks like he looks like the jokingly what we joke about sometimes, Chads. The Chads.
Yeah. Yeah, like that's what he looks like, but he's actually like seems to be decent. I don't know, maybe he's just decent for that documentary. But in this movie, he was really good. And it's basically based upon a group of people that go to a cottage, lodge, whatever you want to call it, and there's a sauna there. And they get locked in the sauna. And how they get locked in the sauna could happen.
Okay.
Like, it could happen. And what happens to them would happen. Like, it's pretty accurate. And I know people out there love Scout Taylor Compton, and she's, don't get me wrong, I get it. Her body's banging, but she is the low peak acting in this movie. I think everybody else outacted her.
Okay.
By leaps and bounds, to be quite honest with you. It is a movie that I really enjoyed. If I had watched it in 2011, it would have been in my top 25. Like, it was 2011, like, of that 2011.
Oh,
like, if I was doing, the watches that we're doing now, it would have been in my top 25 because it's a really good film. It's a really entertaining. It's not too long. I think it's about 80 minutes. So it runs the time fine. And if you like isolation horror, and if you have ever been somewhere and been in a sauna, and like one of these saunas, like it's very much like a Finnish sauna,
yep.
You know what I'm talking about? Fuck, is it accurate? Like, fuck, is it accurate to what would happen, what you would probably do? Yeah. And then even the aftermath is like, yeah, I can't say enough good things. It doesn't look like a good movie because of the poster, and it doesn't sound like a good movie because of the synopsis, but this is a movie that is a good movie that I recommend 100% over some other shit that's on Prime.
Well, you have definitely got me curious so what you're saying is I need to watch this before I go to my UP trip in August where we have a Finnish sauna outside. I
will tell you right now, you will never look at them in the same way again.
Sweet. So yeah, I will have to
You may not even want to go in. I'm not kidding, Scott. Like, that is the impact this could have on you. Like, it is a fuck. Like, and I've been in a lot of these, and I'm telling you right now, how they get locked in and what happens to them could happen.
I am very curious.
Like,
so
it's well done.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this one though is on Canadian Prime and not U.S. Prime. It's actually unavailable on Amazon, which is weird.
So you may have to pay for it.
Yeah, we may have to, there may have to be some other way to watch it, because I need to find a way to watch this movie now, because I am very curious.
I'm telling you, by the end of this year, watch this movie.
Okay.
Like, I feel that, like, it's definitely a summertime movie. It's something that you would watch in the summer, but it's for anyone that has access to Canadian Prime, or I don't know, maybe you have it somewhere else. It is worth the watch. It is not a shitty film on Prime. It is really good.
Nice. Yeah, I will definitely look for this one then for sure. But yeah, I guess that's the end of our extensive watch list. So we can jump into our What We've Been Listening To segment. And, well, I will pass the torch over to Heather for the first show.
Like Torch, like Survivor.
Yes.
That was such a stupid show. Anyway.
So
And the first season was unique, and then I don't even know. I guess it's still probably running now. I don't watch a lot of reality
probably
TV shows,
is.
so I don't really know. Except for like Top Dog, which is a canine show where dogs compete. That's where I roll.
That's the Heather jam right there.
That's the Heather jam. So some people are familiar with Horrorphilia Network, and there's a particular podcast that I never miss an episode for. And they are called No More Room in Hell Fresh Cuts. And I started listening to Fresh Cuts a year and a half ago. And it is one of the best podcasts, in my opinion, for new films. They go out, they choose a new watch every week. It used to be theater watches, but obviously it's VODs right now, or it's Shudder or Prime or whatever they choose. And they do a review. So it's usually done with Mike Merriman, is the continual host, same with Venom. And then they have multiple guests that come on, and sometimes it's just Mike and Venom. And you know, I think they're a popular podcast, but I don't know if they're as popular as they should be, because Mike and Venom are very good. Their chemistry together is phenomenal. They are very respectful of each other's opinions, and the way that they run the show is very professional. Venom is extremely knowledgeable. He knows a lot about films. He has a very extensive background when it comes to film production and just knowledge of things like that. Mike is very knowledgeable as well when it comes to understanding politics and just the way that films are framed. And I really love the way they work off each other. And some of my favorite episodes are ones where Venom hates the movie because he goes into rants and it's really funny. Or when they have big groups on and they talk about films. It's just a really good podcast. If you want to hear a snapshot of a movie and then a spoiler section, because their spoiler section is very extensive. They actually go through the entire film. It has helped me understand movies I didn't get.
Yep.
It has helped me go back and further appreciate movies, or it's opened my eyes to other movies, because I can hear a spoiler and go watch a movie and it's fine. It doesn't ruin it for me at all. That's just the way I am. So I really recommend checking them out. And they're always coming out with new stuff. They have a mother show, which is No More Room in Hell, which is excellent too. That's usually a theme-based show. But I'll be honest, as much as I do enjoy that show, I am an avid Fresh Cuts. And the moment it comes out, I download it. So I really encourage others to check it out.
Yep, and I am the same way. Been a fan of Fresh Cuts for a very long time. And yeah, for the people that don't want spoilers, I recommend listening to the very beginning of whatever movie they're talking about, if you're interested in the film especially, and listen to their non-spoiler section. It's usually short, maybe like anywhere between 10 to 30 minutes, depending on the film and depending on how many people they have on the show. But but they are very good at letting you know when they are going to jump into the spoiler. So it's kind of like breaking it down into two parts. So what I used to do, like especially for films I didn't want to know anything about, just besides like general thoughts, would be I'd listen to it while I was on my way to the theater to go see that specific movie, and then stop at the non-spoiler section, go see the movie, get out of the movie, listen to the spoiler section. But yeah, I've just like you, I've been an advocate for their show for a very long time, like especially if like you're into wanting to know about these newer films.
And like the chemistry between the two of them, it's really, really good. And I'm very lucky that I've developed, I would say, a very close friendship with Venom, and I've definitely gotten to know Mike more, and I would definitely consider us closer friends now over the past year being a podcaster, and I've learned a lot from them. Being on that show, I've learned a lot from how they podcast and how they review movies, and I feel really lucky to know them. I know that sounds really cheesy, and I know Venom listens to this. He's probably like, "What are you doing, Heather?" But it's the truth. I really have learned a lot from them, and I look forward to them continuing this podcast.
Yep, same here. I'll say I love the guys. They are great, and yep, just like you, I've been building friendships with both of them, and I'm hoping that continues.
But they like me more. So
of course they do. Everyone likes.
Just kidding. Scott.
Everyone likes you better, Heather. We already know
That's not true. They like you. You're a much more calmer person than I am. But you have one, and I've never heard of this one. I'm excited to hear about this.
All right. So the one I am going to talk about is the Terrible Terror podcast. It is a solo cast by the guy that goes by the name Terrible Terror. And what he he was an actual big supporter of me back when I was on the Horror Drunks. Would always share our episodes on Twitter and stuff like that, and uh, he would ask me for suggestions for movies, because what he does is he usually will find like a really bad movie and go over it scene by scene, kind of like what you were talking about with Fresh Cuts, how they would go scene by
Mm-hmm.
scene at the end of the spoiler section. He will do this and use movie clips and stuff like that as he does it, and just like groan and complain about like this particular scene or whatever, and he's just like, why am I doing this to myself, as he's watching it. And
Oh, that's
it's
funny.
just, oh, it's really funny, and he's been going for quite some time. I don't even know how many episodes he has out now, but it's got to be over 200 at this point. But this will tell you kind of like the level of movies. Like, not all of them are horror films, but like he just finds like mainly horror and genre specific styles. But
Cool.
this will tell you like the level of films that he chooses. One of his last episodes was Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
That's awesome.
So this is the type of movies he puts himself through for the show. And yeah, I think he is bi-weekly. He has not missed a single episode, like, and just continues. And I think during Halloween, he will usually go weekly with the show and just try to cover a bunch of horror films during that time. And yeah, I recommend this show. He's available on iTunes. And I believe he's on like most of your podcasting apps as well. And obviously, we'll send links to both of these in our show notes. But yeah, highly recommend the Terrible Terror podcast if you're looking for something just fun and very entertaining, because he does a very great job doing this.
Awesome. 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 So I guess we'll take a short break now so you can hear from one of our podcasting friends, and we'll be back with our main topic.
All right.
This is Bo from LegionPodcasts.com. Hey, it's been a crazy time, and when the world gets nuts, we're happy to offer some old-fashioned podcast entertainment. But for some folks, getting a laugh out of a show isn't really helping these days. People who depend on tips in their bartending jobs or have been put on furlough with no pay till the worst of this coronavirus threat has passed. That's a tough spot. That's why we set up a GoFundMe for members of our community, a sort of grand-scale take a penny, leave a penny. For people like myself, for whom the recent disruptions haven't kicked us out of work, well, we can drop a few of those extra pennies in the GoFundMe jar. For those who are directly affected by recent events and find themselves looking for money to pay the electric bill or keep the water on, well, how about you give me a shout at B-O, at legionpodcasts.com. Let me know the situation and what you need, and we'll do our best to make life a little easier. And you can find links to the GoFundMe on the front page of legionpodcasts.com, on our Facebook group page, or on Twitter at Legion Podcasts, where it's the pinned tweet. For those of you who are able, thanks in advance for chipping in. And members of our community who need a hand, hey, here we are. Remember, stay safe, stay healthy, and we're all going to get through this together. Legion isn't just a name, it's who we are. Thanks for listening to all the shows here on Legion Podcasts, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, so we are on to our main topic for the night. And for this episode, we decided to cover the history of verbal storytelling and urban legends. I'm going to be kind of discussing a bit of the history and the definition of what an urban legend is right off the bat. And an urban legend is a fictional story rooted in modern pop culture. You can think of urban legends as today's folklore. Just like traditional folktales, they are based on real parts of culture and often real people. However, in most cases, the details have been exaggerated, ultimately making the stories false. They can take the form of an elaborate joke or a hoax, a rumor gone too far, unsolved mysteries and crimes, popular misconceptions or beliefs, and so on. Some urban legends may be completely plausible, while others may have supernatural elements that make them less believable or clearly not true. Either way, their truthfulness is always questionable, but perhaps also difficult to disprove. In the past, legends were historically relevant and usually related to real human events in one way or another, but hadn't been proven or documented as having actually happened. So throughout history, people had no way to prove whether a legend was true or false. What's more, they were passed on verbally, slowly spreading and evolving over the years, decades, and even centuries. But today, with the help of the internet and many other resources, urban legends are passed on quickly and easily, but it is also usually pretty easy to at least prove whether or not it has real basis in fact. In this way, urban legends today are often easily debunked, regardless of their truthfulness. Some urban legends are silly and lighthearted, while others may actually be quite scary or disturbing. And I brought up an article from Wikipedia here that says that many urban legends are framed as complete stories with plot and characters. The compelling appeal of a typical urban legend is its elements of mystery, horror, fear, or humor. Often they serve as cautionary tales. Some urban legends are morality tales that depict someone, usually a child, acting in a disagreeable manner, only to wind up in trouble, hurt, or dead. Urban legends will often try to invoke a feeling of disgust in the reader, which tends to make these stories more memorable and potent. Elements of shock value can be found in almost every form of urban legend and are partially what makes these tales so impactful. Most urban legends will also include an element of something that is supernatural or paranormal. Many of the most well-known tales will try to balance out the normal with the paranormal. Stories that stray too far into the paranormal aspect are usually not as regarded as ones that will attempt to keep some sort of basis in reality. The person that tells these type of urban legends are, kind of like the stuff we talk about around campfires. Especially when we were younger, just wanted to tell each other a scary story. And one of the things that you almost always hear is that when the person gets ready to tell the story, he or she will usually start off by saying they know someone who had this happen to them, so a friend of a friend, or a story of a parent's friend that they heard from their parents, etc., etc.
Have you ever done that?
Back when I used to go to summer camp, when I was a young kid, we would tell like silly ghost stories, and we'd take turns doing that. And it'd be like, oh yeah, so this happened to one of my friends, or oh, my parents told me about that this happened to someone they knew. And yep, total. This was like a total memory lane thing because like so many people have done this over the years. It's just fun.
Do you believe in urban legends?
Some of them, I shake my head that are way too ridiculous to be real, but there are some that I go, that could have happened.
Do you think I believe in urban legends, Scott?
I think you do.
I do. I'm going to tell you a story that happened actually to me.
Oh, please do.
So many years ago, when I was in university, I befriended a individual that lived out in Fort Erie. So for my American brothers and sisters, that's just on the other side of Buffalo.
Okay.
And myself and another girlfriend went out to see her. And we were staying at her place, and we went to an outdoor concert. And I was driving, so I wasn't drinking. And it was one of those free concerts anyway. We saw the Tea Party. So for any of my Canadian people, you know who the Tea Party are. Maybe
nice.
Some random. Oh, you know Tea Party?
Yep.
Yeah, I've seen them in concert a couple of times. I'm a pretty big fan.
That's awesome.
Jeff Martin and his hair. But anyway, so we leave the concert, and it's really foggy. And Fort Erie is a very it's near the water, so it's near the Niagara River. And we're driving along, and we're blasting music and whatever. And all of a sudden in my headlights, I see this dog, and it's a big dog, and it's rabid looking. It's shady, like a shaggy. It looks like it's sick. And I scream and I swerve, like it came out of nowhere. And I of course got out of the car. The dog was gone. Nothing. And it was literally like inches from my car.
Oh, wow.
So I swerved and thought, oh my God, I hit it. And there was nothing there. And I turned to my two girlfriends and I said, and even before I got the words out, I'm like, they're like, see the dog? I'm like, yeah, you saw that, right? They're like, yeah. That ugly, like, fucking sick-looking dog that was huge? I'm like, yeah, you saw that. They're like, yeah, we did.
Huh.
So to this day, I will never know if that was an animal, and I just happened to swerve in time.
Right.
Or if it was something else. And that didn't happen to a friend of a friend. That motherfucking happened to me.
Right. Exactly.
And I remember we went back to her place, and like we drove back from Fort Erie the next day, and it's about an hour drive. And I remember thinking I'm like, so you saw that last night? She's like, no. I'm like Heather, like you said it. We said it before you said it to us. Like, it's not like you said it and we just jumped on the bandwagon. Like, we saw it too. And I'm like, fuck, like it was the weirdest thing. that I've ever had happen to me. I've had other shit happen supernaturally wise. That has occurred. And so I'm a very big believer of supernatural stuff in urban legends. But yeah, that's a campfire story. That is true.
Yeah, that's awesome. Actually, that's very creepy as well.
Yeah, it is. And like, who knows, right? Like, it could have just been an animal.
Right.
I wasn't drinking. I had 0 alcohol in my system. I don't even think the other girls, like, maybe they had a drink. Maybe. Like, we didn't have a lot of money, so, and it was at a concert, so we had to go in the beer tent, and it's like $10 a beer, so.
Right.
You weren't spending that kind of money as a university student. And yeah, it was a foggy night, but the fact that they saw the same thing that I saw before I said anything tells me that I wasn't imagining it, but who knows if it was real or something else.
Yeah, that is a very interesting story.
Yeah.
Like, and yeah, like you said, that could have been anything.
Could have been.
Yeah, but it's one of those. Yeah, that's like exactly what urban legends can come from.
Exactly.
And that's kind of like me. I have a couple stories as well. Like the one I think I told you about this one, but like it's kind of like a ghost story in a way. But was my brother was obsessed with Alice Cooper, and there was a CD that he had to buy, or no, it was back with a Walkman, so it was a tape. And we were on our way to like some vacation with our parents, and we were in the back of the van, and he bought this tape at a store on the way, and it was the Hey Stupid album by Alice Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
And he listened to the whole entire thing, and I'm just chilling, watching TV or something in the back of the van, and all of a sudden he just rips his headphones off and just like looked like he went white. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? He's like, I don't know, listen to this. And he rewound it just a few seconds, and I think the song was called like Toys in the Attic was playing, and it's the very last song on the album. And then it goes dead silence. And then my brother's name, just so I can finish the story here, is his name's Steve. But you go on for a few seconds afterwards, and then all of a sudden, just this very faint voice, you just hear, Steven.
Oh, wow.
And then nothing. And I heard it, and it freaked me out, but I'm going, okay, that's got to be that must be just some weird, like, after thing on the tape. Well, we end up going to his aunt's house a couple of years later, and she has the record album of it. So we're like, oh, well, let's see if it's on there. Couldn't find it. Like, went all the way to the end, didn't hear it.
Wow.
A friend of ours bought the CD, and we listened to it. Didn't have it.
Yeah.
So Steve was like, all right, I'm going to go buy the CD because I really like this. He buys the CD. It's on there again. So I don't know why, or how, but yeah, it was whenever he bought it, it was on there, and it would say his name at the very end of at the end of the disc or the end of the tape.
That's crazy, right? And like, there could be a logical explanation on how that one was cut, and somebody did that as a joke. But you don't know, and that's the fun thing about urban legends.
Right, exactly. And it's just one of those that, like, it creeps me out, but it's one of those that I just tell everybody about because it's just so bizarre.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I guess we can kind of move into what is now the new age version of urban legends. And, a lot of people know them now as considered creepypasta from the creepypasta website.
Mm-hmm.
An online crowdsourced fiction like the stories on the Creepypasta Wiki is the subject of increasing study in literature and mass media academic circles, where the form is seen as a novel take on an ancient human pastime. The crowdsourced fiction bears similarities to the folklore that was once passed down orally through generations. Only now, the myths are minted online in a matter of hours or days, and it is home to a thrilling new form of immersive, interactive human storytelling. Now, have you ever been to the Creepypasta website?
Yes, I have.
There are some very fascinating stories on there, and like some long-winded ones, some very short ones.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But yeah, a lot of what you could consider now like new age urban legends.
Absolutely.
Like obviously one of the most well-known ones would be the Slender Man,
mm-hmm.
which was a thread that was called Create Paranormal. It was created on this thread called Create Paranormal Images, and it encouraged people to create these ethereal images. The idea was to Photoshop the freakiest things you could, hopefully giving birth to a brand new urban legend in the process. And that's what happened with Victor Surge. who created 2 images of what was dubbed the Slender Man, a black and white photograph that looked at first like simple images of kids playing, but which held some terrifying secrets if you looked hard enough, showing a tall, lanky humanoid figure wearing a black suit and a featureless face who can be seen just hiding in the background. And the reason the Slender Man became so well known is because of the horrible crime that happened with these 2 girls that ended up killing another girl.
Well, they didn't. They tried to kill her. She actually survived.
Oh, she did. Okay.
Yeah, I watched a special on it because I was so angry. And they left her for dead, but a jogger happened to find her, and or a bicyclist or something like that, and she survived. I don't know how she did because they stabbed her quite a bit, but she managed to survive.
Yeah, and that's incredible because wasn't it? And I'm trying to go off the top of my head here, but wasn't it because they were saying the Slender Man told them to?
Yeah, the one girl believed that to make Slender Man happy or to please Slender Man, they had to do a sacrifice and convince the other one that they should kill their friend.
Yeah, that's really crazy, and like that's exactly how an urban legend is born, right there.
Yeah, exactly.
And obviously there is a movie that had come out recently in like the last couple of years, but I have not seen that. Have you?
So this was where I'm going to probably show a little bit more of my political hat. I kind of, as much as I like the figure, and I did mention that I thought it was cool when I saw it at a Halloween, because I enjoyed the story off of Creepypasta, I didn't really agree with the movie being made about it because of what happened with these young girls.
Gotcha.
I think that that's a young age to go out and engage in that kind of behavior to try to harm someone. So I've chosen not to watch the movie because of that. I've also heard it's not a great movie, but I have a hard time knowing what was interpreted from Creepypasta, and I don't think that was ever the intention of Creepypasta. I think the character itself is cool, but I didn't really like the fact that they made a movie afterwards.
Okay, that makes sense.
What happened, so I have not.
Yeah, because I never bothered with it either. Because I just one of those, like at that time I just had no interest.
Well, and I've heard it's not that great. I don't know, maybe people on the page can comment. I just I think the story of it is fine on Creepypasta. Like I think that's cool. I read that. I think that's interesting. You're right, it's a modern day urban legend. Bottom line is it's a modern day urban legend, and it talks about what we're referring to.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And this one I had not heard of, but I thought it was very interesting. But I guess one of the newer ones that is out there is called the Elevator Game. Elevator Game involves entering an elevator alone in a building of at least 10 stories, then pushing the buttons in a certain order. The goal is to transport yourself to another world, a sort of mirror universe or alternate dimension. Getting back can be tricky though, and if a woman enters the elevator at the 5th floor while you're in the middle of either the journey out or the return trip, do not look at her, ever. And that's just like a kind of brief synopsis of what that story is about. I did not get a chance to go and look up the story yet, but I am very curious. However, it's pretty popular because apparently there is a movie that is in pre-production right now called The Elevator Game, and it is based off of this urban legend game.
That's really interesting. And also, if you follow, there's a YouTube channel, and I can't remember the name of it now, but I saw something that talked about this myth before. That's why it was familiar to me. And people do play it. And I don't know, I wouldn't play that. And,
no.
And I get that there's people out there that are listening to this and being like, oh, logically, come on, nothing's going to happen. I just feel like there's too many things in this world that is what if that I don't feel like chancing it.
Yeah, I'll say that's the way I look at it. It's like, why take your chances?
Yeah, it's just one of those things. But yeah, that's interesting. Well, I guess it's going to be moving on to me then. So what we wanted to do is, take a look at urban legends in films and some of our most popular films that are out there. So I looked up an article, Urban Legends, a collection of international tall tales and terrors. And it's an academic article that was written in 2009. And it breaks down urban legends into specific categories. So either they're meant as a warning, as you talked about before, others are meant as a storytelling, but all of them have a message. And there's sometimes a focus on revenge of a person that has been wronged or a warning. So one of the first movies that I wanted to talk about was A Town That Dreaded Sundown. So The Town That Dreaded Sundown came out in 1976. And Scott and I have both seen I believe we confirmed that it's the sequels.
Yes.
Yes. So the film is loosely based upon the 1946 Texarkana Moonlight Murders crimes that were done by an unidentified serial killer known as Phantom Killer. So it starts off with the idea that this is a true story, and it talks about 8 murders that had occurred. So the film is loose enough with the facts, and that one family member of the victim filed a lawsuit in 1978 over the description of his sister, or how his sister was shown in the film. The fabricated facts in the film have also caused rumors and folklore to spread for generations around Texarkana. The film's tagline claims that the man who killed 5 people still lurks the streets today, causing the officials of the neighborhood cities to threaten Pierce over the ads in 1977. So obviously this was creating fear-mongering, right? If you start saying that the killer's still out there, then you're going to have people that are going to start to get upset.
Yeah.
So we both saw the sequel that came out in October 16th, 2014. I only just saw it recently, though. I think I saw it this year. Back in like maybe January or February sometime, I think I watched it. It was interesting. I got to say, it was a good movie.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Because I think I've seen it probably in like 2015, 2016, somewhere around there. And yeah, I thought it was a really good horror film.
Nice. So the legend, so the Texas Moonlight Murders, a term coined by the news media, was a series of unsolved murders and other violent crimes committed in and around the Texarkana in the spring of 1946 by an unidentified serial killer. So the interesting thing about this serial killer is he would murder people that were parking. Right. So it was on this idea of the sex mania, that the individual had issues with people that were engaging in sexual activity, presumably out of wedlock, because if you are married, you would have a house
Right.
that you would be having sex in, and you would not be going to park. And I think that that's really interesting because I feel like it really does try to promote this idea of no sex outside of marriage. Because as we know from our last episode, the birth control pill was only introduced in the 60s. And up to that point, you were relying on things like the pull-out method. I don't even know how widely condoms were used. Probably not in the 1946 at all.
Yeah, I don't
There probably
see
wasn't
it.
even a thing. So you were relying simply on the pull-out method to hope that you did not become impregnated. And I think, as most of us are aware, young ladies are the most fertile when they're younger,
Mm-hmm.
and it is much easier to become pregnant. So I don't know if you've ever gone parking, Scott, but has this ever been a concern for you?
Well, kind of funny because we did have a place called Fireman's Alley in Montrose that was just like this weird dirt road that no one went down. There was no houses, no nothing. And we would just drive down it, park, and be like a makeout place. And, it's not like in the movies where you see like 20 to 30 cars lined up and everyone's making out in the same spot like you see in some movies.
Yeah.
It was just more like a place like some of our friends had known about, so we'd just go there like and take whoever we're with to make out. But yeah, I was always worried about finding someone finding me or like catching us and not knowing who that person could have been.
So I went to a lot of makeout places in cars. Oh my God. I was like listing them in my head and I'm like, oh yeah, I went there.
Wow.
Anyway. There was one particular, and Christian, I don't think Christian listens to this show, but it's a place called Kearns Park. It was a very notorious area, as well as we have a little airfield. Now, when I say an airfield, it's for model airplanes. Okay. Like one of those small aircrafts, not like big aircrafts. And we go there, and there were many a makeout sexy time sessions I have had in cars and blankets and such. But one time, I was dating this guy, and I still lived at home, and we decided we were going to stay out all night long. Okay. Like we were just going to stay up till, I think I told my parents I was sleeping somewhere else, and we just drove around all night. And we went to this park area, and we're sitting there in the car, and we're just talking, and lights come up behind us, headlights, and the headlights go off, and an officer gets out of the car.
Uh-oh.
And walks up to my window, and I, of course, roll it down. And I'm like, good evening, officer, typical stuff. And he's like, what are you guys doing? I'm like, oh, we're just up here talking. And he turns to me and he goes, ma'am, are you in the car because you want to be in the car?
Oh.
And I said, my poor boyfriend was like, please God say yes, right? I'm like, yes, sir. And I'm trying not to laugh, right? Because it's a legit question. Like, it's a good question to ask. It's late,
Right.
like 4 a.m. or whatever it was. And I'm like, yes, officer, I do want to be in the car. And we weren't doing anything. I think we were kind of like leading up to doing something, but we hadn't started yet.
Right.
But yeah, it was pretty. And he left. He was like, all right, guys, have a good night. You know, that was about it. But yeah, it was the only time that I've ever been out somewhere and I'm like, holy fuck. Just showed up and like shone headlights in my car. It's just like some urban legend come to life, and it just turned out it was a police officer. But yeah, I have been parking many a times, and I have been a little creeped out. I'm not gonna lie, I have been concerned. Obviously not that concerned, considering I
did it a couple of times at least.
Well, more than a couple, Scott.
Well, I was trying to be just.
Hey, you know what? I have no shame. I had a good time.
I know you don't.
Like, there's nothing wrong. There was nothing wrong with the dude being there. There should nothing wrong with me doing either. So, but definitely now, you know, I have like zero interest in ever making it in a car again. First of all, I own my own house, so if I want to make it
Right.
in a house, like it's gonna be home, and it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you had a lot of car sex or whatever. It's tricky.
It really is. Yes.
Right.
I have had that many times because Fireman's Alley, like I said.
Right, and like you're trying to like figure out the right position, and you're it's so awkward. You're trying to like climb over shit and take off your clothes, and oh my god,
especially if you have like a compact car.
Oh yeah, totally, right? And like, oh my goodness. Anyway, like what a perfect opportunity for a killer to strike too, really.
Yeah.
Like, you're like half like on a seat and your like pants are down around your ankles. You can't really run anywhere anyway. Like it's so like no wonder. But obviously this warning was put out there to prevent premarital sex, right? So I think it's a very, very interesting urban legend. So the next one we're gonna look at is When a Stranger Calls, 1979. So originally it was a short film called The Sitter, which was supposed to be just 20 minutes and was expanded. Because I remember you saying that you found this movie a little slow.
Yeah, I'll say that explains a lot, actually, reading that. Because, yeah, the beginning and the end for me.
Well, it's only supposed to be a 20-minute movie, so that's probably why, right? So the main character, Jill Johnson, is babysitting the children of Dr. Mandrakis,
I think is what it is.
At his home, and when the children are asleep, Jill receives a telephone call from a man who asks her if she's checked the children. Jill initially dismisses the telephone call as a practical joke. However, the calls become more and more infrequent and threatening. So this is back when you used to do prank calls still.
Oh, yeah.
Right, and Nicky Nine Door and all that other shit that people used to do. So anyway, she becomes more and more frightened. She calls the police, and eventually she finds out that the children have been killed. Right?
Yes.
Just seeing if Scott's paying attention still.
Yeah, I'm reading on my phone your notes, so.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, the kids died? He's shocked. He just found out himself. That's what happened in the movie. It's too funny. Anyway, so, and obviously an investigation continues into this. So this is based off of the legend of the babysitter and the man upstairs. So I've seen the remake of When a Stranger Calls as well. And it's very, like, they use Jill's name and it's a little bit similar. And I do enjoy the chase scene in that movie. But I think the original ties more to the urban legend than the remake does. So
okay.
A teenage girl is babysitting at night. The children have been put to bed. The babysitter's downstairs watching television. The phone rings. The caller tells her to check the children. She dismisses the call, goes back to watching television. The anonymous caller dials back several times. Eventually, the babysitter calls the police, who informs her they're tracing the call. Then they call her to say that the call is coming from inside the house. So there's actually several different outcomes to this story. From the part of where she calls the police and the police call her back. So there's the traditional ending where she evacuates the home and the police meet her and they find out the calls are coming from inside the house, and the identified prowler was calling her after killing and eating the children upstairs. Right? Obviously trying to get her to come upstairs and be killed as well. So some other outcomes include the caller turns out to be either one of the children or an elder sibling who decided to scare the babysitter as a prank but they get told off by the police while being taken away by the police. The prowler whispers and says out loud, "See you soon," to the babysitter, which is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right?
it's nice and creepy.
And then the second one is years later, the babysitter is now an adult and has a family of her own. One evening, she and her husband go to have dinner while a babysitter looks after the children. The evening is going well until the waiter approaches their table and says there's a phone call for her. Like, this is back in the day where you would have to call the restaurant and they would have to come get you, right? Like, talk about dated. She answers the phone and hears, "Did you check the children?" And that is the ending. And appears in some movie versions. I haven't seen When a Stranger Calls for a while. Is this how the movie ends?
It's part of the ending, but it continues on after that.
Does it? Okay. And in some creepypastas, the version of the babysitter is increasingly unnerved by what she assumes is a hideous life-size statue of a clown in the room. When the parents call to check on the children, the babysitter complains about the statue and asks if she can cover it up with a sheet and move it from the room. The confused parents say that they do not have a clown statue. The babysitter is then attacked by the clown, who turns out to be a murderer in disguise, and a similar plot can be found in the film Amusement. So, I don't know, did you ever babysit, Scott? Was that something that you ever did?
I did it once, and it was like a daytime babysitting job.
Okay, so you didn't have this nighttime, you're alone with the kids.
No.
You put them to bed. Yeah, this is definitely a chick thing, because I babysat a lot, almost as much as I went to makeout points. Obviously not on the same night.
I hope
But yeah, like I babysat tons, and I can remember there's something creepy about being in somebody's house without them home, you know. And it was different when I babysat for family friends, but it was always weird when you babysat for people that you kind of knew. And I used to work at the YMCA, so I get a lot of kids that I would end up babysitting for. And I always wondered about this. Like, I never got crank calls, and I didn't actually usually pick up the phone when someone would call, because by that point you had answering machines and stuff like that. But
right.
I think in the 70s, this could have been a really legit thing, you know, because you had to pick up the phone or someone would keep calling. And that was a real fear. Now, like, this movie would be like, I keep getting texts to check the children, right?
Right,
someone
exactly.
keeps Snapchatting me that the kids are dead. Like, it would be a completely different world, but I think it was a legit concern. But in my searching, I really didn't hear of any real life cases where it happened. But what do you think? I'm not sure what the urban legend is here. Is it to pay attention to the kids that you're babysitting? Like, what is the point of this story?
This one is, I'm trying to think, like, I would probably say it's more just a scare tale of being home alone. Like maybe like kind of a precautionary tale of lock your doors type deal.
Yeah, maybe. Lock your doors, you know, be responsible as a babysitter. Don't be like not paying attention to the kids. Anyway, or it's just something creepy. You know, it's just something meant to be creepy, and whatever the case may be. So the next one is The Burning, which I think you've seen this movie.
Yeah. Oh,
once or twice.
Just a few times.
Just a few times. And it's about Cropsey. So actually, the legend of Cropsey in this isn't like the legend that I found of Cropsey in other places, but we'll go with the Cropsey legend here. He's a caretaker who was burned due to a horrible prank and then comes back to kick ass and take names. But the actual legend is about a gentleman named Andre Rand, and he was an American convicted kidnapper of 2 children and suspected serial killer, serving 25 years to life in prison. He's eligible for parole in 2037, and he's the subject of the 2009 documentary Cropsey, which states that he may have been the source of the Cropsey legend.
Interesting.
So interesting, right? So the Cropsey in The Burning is basically a pissed off caretaker who comes back to take revenge. So very much a campfire story of, you know, maybe you shouldn't pull really mean pranks on people because they're going to come back and fuck your shit up.
Yep.
But this other one is really fascinating. Have you heard about the actual legend, quote unquote, before?
No, like I knew of it, like, but I've never heard actually heard the legend. I actually wanted to watch that Cropsey documentary before we got to this, but I was not able to find it.
Yeah, I saw it we have it on Prime here in Canada. I didn't watch it because I felt like it didn't really fit the theme of a film and tying in a legend into a film, an urban legend into a film. But I thought it was an interesting comparison. So who knows? Maybe it'll do something with that as another Cropsey movie. And then, you know, back in my heyday, I know what you did last summer. in 1997. It's loosely based on the 1973 novel by the same name by Lois Duncan, and it's the first installment in I Know What You Did Last Summer trilogy. I have not seen the third one. Like, I'll always know what you did last summer.
I never bothered with that one.
I didn't go there. I did watch I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, and that wasn't as good. For those of us who like I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Yep. Heather and I.
Yeah. For Scott and I. The film centers on 4 young friends who are stalked by a hook-wielding killer 1 year after they cover up for a car accident in which they killed a man. The film also draws on inspirations known from the urban legend known as the Hook, and so does the 1980 slasher film Prom Night and House on Sorority Row. So that's apparently some other inspirations for this movie. So the Hook legend, the Hook or the Hook Man, an urban legend about a killer with a pirate-like hook for a hand attacking couples in parked cars. So this is interesting because this talks about parking again, right?
Yep.
So the story is thought to date back to at least the mid-50s, and it gained significant attention when it was reprinted in the advice column of Dear Abby in the 1960s. And it's become a part of pop culture. So the idea is that the basic premise is a young couple cuddling in a car. Yes, I'm sure that's what we're doing. I was just cuddling as well.
Yeah.
Suddenly, a news bulletin reports that a serial killer has just escaped from a nearby institution. The killer has a hook for one of his hands, and for various reasons, they decide to leave quickly. And in the end, the killer's hook is either found hanging on the door handle or embedded in the door itself. And then other variations talk about scraping on the door, the couple spotting the killer, warning others, narrowly escaping, and another version, the man goes to confront the figure, comes back and finds his girlfriend dead. So it's interesting in I Still Know What You Did Last Summer because they didn't necessarily take that approach.
No.
They hit the man, but if you look at where they were coming back from, so if you look at the scene prior to that happening, they were drinking.
Yep.
Both couples engaged in premarital sex. And they committed this crime and did not want to take ownership for it because they didn't want their futures destroyed. And of course, as the film goes on, their futures end up getting destroyed anyway.
Yep.
And revenge ends up coming back to haunt them. Have you heard of this story? Like, have you told the Hookman story, or? Like,
I've never told the Hookman story, but yes, I have had it told to me in both of those variations at different points.
Did you ever have the Hookman stalk you when you were hooking up with them ladies, Scott?
There was one time, like in the fireman's alley, where I must have parked too close to a tree on the side of the road, and the branches were scraping against the door.
Oh my God!
when the wind picked up, and that freaked me out. But common sense, I realized what it was. But still.
So were you with a girlfriend, a one night stand? Like, was it someone that you knew well? I guess is what I'm getting to.
Yeah, it was because this one I don't think it was like to make out. I think this was just me and one of my lady friends at the time, just high school friends, just out there away from everybody, smoking weed
and talking.
Yeah.
And you hoping you were going to make out.
Well, of course. Scott was always hoping that would happen.
If I give her some weed, maybe.
No.
I'm just kidding, Scott. It would have been consensual. I know you would have got consent, but
yeah, I'm saying more like Scott would have been like, I'm gonna smoke weed with this chick, and then, well, in my head, that'd be cool if it happens, but I'm not gonna make no move.
That's true. You would just sit there and like stare at her. Did you like the weed with a gun?
Are you high? Are you as high as I am?
Because I'm high on you anyway.
Oh,
I know, right? Man, if I was a dude,
you would have so many good.
Dave C and I could go out and we could just pick up the ladies. That's what would happen. But anyway, I think that's really creepy that those branches were hitting the car. Like, I would have been. Was she creeped out? Was the girl creeped out?
Yeah, I think it's because, and it doesn't help that we were both stoned off our ass and paranoid as it was.
Right. Like how Scott and I are showing what delinquents we are.
Oh, we totally are. But I mean, when we're teenagers,
too.
who wasn't at that age?
Yes, teenagers.
Well, teens, early 20s, mid 20s.
30s last week. Who's judging?
Whatever.
Whatever works.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think it's interesting. It does set that seed of doubt in your mind. Yet again, planting that seed of doubt.
Yeah.
We talked about that in our haunted attractions episode. So, Urban Legends 1998. I think this is obviously, urban legends. Talking about urban legends. So the plot focuses on a series of murders on the campus of a private New England university that's filmed in Toronto, by the way, as I found out. All of which appear to be modeled after popular urban legends. In addition to its younger cast, the film features, Robert Englund's in it, Loretta Devine, John Nedville, and Brad Dourif. So yeah, I think that's kind of cool. I didn't realize. I forgot that Loretta was in that, but yeah, she was.
Yeah.
She was like the wise woman that was talking about urban legends, I think. So some of the urban legends that are included in the movie is the killer in the back seat. The legend involves a woman who is driving, being followed by a truck or a car or a truck, and the mysterious pursuer flashes his high beams, tailgates her, and sometimes even rams her vehicle. When she finally makes it home, she realizes that the driver was trying to warn her that there was a man or a murderer or escaped mental patient hiding in her back seat. There's also the one about the gas station, which happens in urban legends.
Yes, it does.
Right? And that poor gentleman who's stuttering. Like, did that scene not, pull your heart out of your chest?
Oh, it totally did. Because I think that was the scene I think that was Brad Dourif's scene. I think he was the gas station attendant.
Yeah, and he's trying to tell her, but he can't get the words out, and she drives off, and you see him yell, "There's a man in your backseat!"
Yep.
And something happens to him. I believe he gets killed because they can't find him again. I remember they
Oh, yeah, that's
for
right.
the gas station attendant, but we weren't able to find him. So the guy, probably the killer, or the individual that's the killer, comes back to take care of him, which is a little dicey because I don't know if that killer could have taken down that dude. But anyway.
Right.
But yeah, and obviously it's trying to say don't judge a book by its cover. Realize that someone's trying to help you, even though they may look sketchy or whatever. They could be somebody there to support you. So I thought that was interesting that they opened it up with that scene. Where are we here? So as we talked about the moral, so the hooded killer, couple parks and hooks them, or sorry, the hook killer, the couple parks and the hooks them. In this case, a dude is hanging by but in a parka. Do you remember the scene? Him and this girl go and they're gonna make out, and then he gets killed, and he's hanging.
Yep, and he's hanging above the car. I think.
And he's scraping the car with his feet.
Yep.
Right? That's what she hears. Yet again, we've already talked about that legend earlier, so I won't go into great detail with that. The headlight flashing, which caused the whole thing. So this is why the killer was so mad. So beginning in the late 1980s, a widespread rumor regarding flashing headlights was spread mainly through fax.
So dated.
Can you imagine, going to a fax machine and being flashing headlights will get you. Later on, the internet. I love when people say that internet, right?
Yeah.
It's a thing you go to, the internet.
The interwebs.
The interweb, right? So the rumor started that various gangs across the United States carried out initiation where, the driver drives around and with his headlights off, and whichever driver flashes his headlights in response, unlit car becomes the target, and they basically play chicken, for a lack of a better word, or they chase them down or whatever. So have you heard of this, or have you ever seen people doing this?
Yep, I've never seen people doing it, but this was one that was always kind of a warning to us teenagers when we first got our cars and driver's license and stuff like that, to be careful on this and blah, blah, blah. And obviously, it could have happened at some point, but not in no country town like I was living in.
Yeah, it didn't, not that I knew of, but I would never go and say that it hasn't. I'm probably sure this has happened.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that people have done this. The rumor has been proven and has been proven an urban legend. So it says that it's been proven an urban legend. I think people have probably done this. I don't know if someone's got hurt, but I'm sure people have stalked someone with their headlights and been at dicks and stuff like that. Obviously, it's
for
not
sure.
a good idea. But and then the next one was Pop Rocks and soda. So the rumor persists that eating Pop Rocks and drinking soda would cause a person's stomach to boil and explode. Okay, so this movie came out in 1998. I would have been 15. I kind of bought into this, Scott. I'm a little embarrassed to say, but I was like, is that true? That can't be true. That doesn't make any sense. Now, 37-year-old Heather's like, that's the fucking dumbest shit I've ever heard. I'm like, quit it. Yeah, and I wouldn't do it.
I got challenged to do it because we were just joking around because I think someone said, all right, I'll give you $10 if you do it. So I said, screw it, I'll chance it. And I did it.
And nothing happened. Scott is still here today.
Or am I?
Or is he? Now, I like the scene, though, because the guy, like, pretends to, convulse or whatever in front of the lecture hall. I always thought that was really cool. But then later on, it's mixed with, I think it's bleach or some kind of chemical cleaner, and the kid does die.
Yep.
So later on in the movie, it is mixed with, which would obviously kill anyone. But there was such a concern about this that they actually did a test back in the 70s to confirm that this was not a thing. Isn't that funny?
Just to assuage people's fears.
Yeah, just to like make sure people were like, no, like if you take Pop Rocks, you take Coca-Cola, you're not going to die. But that goes to tell you the power that legends can have and storytelling can have, right? It can make people believe things and they need to be proven otherwise.
Yep.
So Urban Legends 2. Okay, real talk. Besides one urban legend in this, the rest are really shitty. Like, they're real, like, loosey-goosey urban legends.
Oh, they totally are.
This movie, and Scott's heard this story a million times, my girlfriends went to Trent University, which is exactly where this movie was filmed. And when it came out in 2000, my girlfriends were in their... So, it came out in 2000. They went to that university in 2002. And myself and a couple other friends would go up to see them. So they're about a 2.5-hour drive away from where we were. And we would stay with them in their dorm rooms. And my one girlfriend, Amanda, and I would watch this movie. And we'd get lit. We would run around the campus. Like, God, don't I sound like a delinquent on this podcast?
You are such a troublemaker.
Making out, getting drunk on campuses. Like, I'm just a good time. Like, really, let's just be real here. But yeah, it's so good. The movie is not that good, but that campus is really that beautiful.
Oh, it is the architecture is insane.
It's
love
insane.
the look of it.
And we would go and like there's specific scenes where you see the killer, and we would go there. Like the clock tower is a thing. Like where that final scenes in the clock tower, that was at that university. Like
that is cool.
It's really, really, really cool. But the urban legends, not so much. So. The only one that I kind of always thought was interesting was the kidney thing.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Waking up in a tub of ice. So in the age of organic transplants and donor shortage, this little myth of, an unsuspected person being kidnapped and having their kidney removed. Like, it is scary. The thought of that happening is quite frightening.
Oh, absolutely is.
You could go to a bar, get drugged, and there is like a black market for organs. Like, that's not exactly a far-fetched thing. I think it's one of the ones I'm most scared of because I feel like I'm like, yeah, that could happen.
Yeah, and this is one of those urban legends that has been around for a very long time too.
And I feel like this has occurred just because of the black market for organs.
Oh, absolutely, especially now with the dark web.
Like it says here that they're worth like American dollars wise over 10,000. And I don't know if that's we have like some sources here, but I don't know how accurate that is, but I think that's really interesting. Anyway, I think it's a valid urban legend, one of the better ones that they put in here. So some other ones that are in here, Amy recounts about an urban legend about a student screaming at midnight to relieve tension, causing a brutal assault to go unnoticed, and this is later reenacted with one of the characters' deaths. Sandra tells of a burrito contained with a cockroach egg, and then the egg hatches inside the girl's nose, which I don't quite get how the egg. That's right. Like, let it be in your stomach, but anyway.
Right.
And of a chicken sandwich containing pus from a chicken's tumor.
Yeah, and the burrito one that you know what that reminds me of? The Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark story of the girl that thought she had the pimple on her face, and it was the egg sac of the spiders.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah, in the movie.
Yep. Well, and even in the book too.
No, that's right. Yeah. Well, yeah, because everything was taken from the books for the movies. That's a good one. I forgot about that one completely. Vanessa warns Travis that the cell phones cause cancer. I feel like this is still something that's talked about. It hasn't changed. We think cell phones also caused, or what is it that you guys think?
5G caused COVID-19.
Right. That's another urban legend. It's super accurate.
Yeah.
The first scene of Amy has a girl discovering the corpse of her dog who supposedly licked her hand at night in the shower. The message, humans can lick too. I heard this as well in another movie that we watched, and I can't remember which one it is. But yeah, it's another urban legend story.
Yeah, but that one I've been told around a campfire before too.
Yeah, right. And which is, I think it's a very upsetting thing about a dead dog.
Yeah.
I could see that being like an asshole piece of shit ex-boyfriend or someone that's like an
Yep.
abusive piece of shit. Like that probably has happened, but it's probably a domestic abuse situation. The basis for one of the scenes in Amy's film is a carnival displaying fake corpses in the Tunnel of Terror. As the carnival moves around, several children are missing, and the fake corpses are revealed to be real. So it's obviously about a student making a film or writing a screenplay on urban legends. It's not the best movie, but I just have a nostalgia for it because of where it was filmed. Straight up.
Yeah. And that's it's still fun to watch.
It is, like, they're bubblegum films, but really the first Urban Legends was really the first one that really kind of exposed urban legends. And then I wanted to include this one because it's probably one of my top favorite movies of all time is Sleepy Hollow.
Love that movie.
Right. So Sleepy Hollow is actually a village in the town of Mount Pleasant in Westchester County, New York, and the village is located on the east bank of the Hudson River, about 30 miles or 48 kilometers from my Canadian friends, north of New York City, and is served by Phillies Manor stop on the Metro North Hudson line. The short story for Sleepy Hollow was written by Washington Irving and was inspired by an actual Hessian soldier who was decapitated by a cannon during the Battle of White Plains around Halloween 1776. Yeah. So the original story is obviously very different than the movie. Ichabod Crane is trying to court Katrina Van Tassel, and he is rebuffed by her, and he leaves, and that's when he's chased by the Headless Horseman, and he's never seen from again. So that's the original tale, but obviously the movie is different. And I wrote, why is this? And I think obviously because the movie would have been pretty freaking short if
right. Johnny Depp's character is just gone right away.
Right. And I do like the adaptation of the story. I like the fact that he plays a police officer who's more into evidence and faith-based stuff. And he goes to this town and he's trying to discover what the murders are caused. And all the murders are done well. Like it's sad. Spoilers, there is a child that is killed, which I still find that scene hard.
Yeah.
Because you think the kid's going to get away and he doesn't.
Yeah.
And I thought the acting in it was good. I thought Christina Ricci was pretty good in that role.
Yeah.
I thought her and Johnny Depp had some great chemistry together. Christopher Walken is great in that movie. I can watch that movie over and over again.
And Walken is so creepy in that too.
Yeah, like it's just a really, really good movie. And even though it deviates from the story, I still think it's a really solid film.
Oh, it absolutely is.
Right. So those are historical urban legends. So they're legends that have been taught for a story or revenge or warnings. But then we have, as this article that I mentioned earlier talks about, the development of contemporary urban legends. So instead of urban legends being devoted to just one space or one event, the idea is with urban legends of today, they can be anywhere. And they can spread out and they can affect anyone at any location, which makes them scarier and makes sense with global expansion.
Yeah.
Right? So one of the ones that really does fit this is Candyman.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So Candyman came out in 1992, and it's based on the short story The Forbidden by Clive Barker, which I've never read. Have you read the short story?
I have not. I do know that it's like Candyman is haunting a male instead of a female.
Yeah, I haven't read it, so I have no idea. But my understanding is the similar haunting piece is the same. So in Candyman, a university student named Helen is doing a thesis on graffiti and selects a rundown, basically living complex, apartment building, whatever, to focus in her study. And as she notices the disturbing graffiti, she begins to learn about the legend of Candyman and how he was murdered and what he continues to haunt. And Rolling Stone magazine talked about that this really continued to promote the racialized fear of Black men against white women.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't think about it that way.
Yeah, and they talk about this as well in the documentary Noir,
Horror noir, yeah.
Noir. And I think and Tony Todd's like, that's not the impression I got from that movie. But I think it's a very interesting argument, because if you do look at the seduction and how that community is presented, and some lines that are said in that community, particularly when Helen and her research assistant, who is Black, meets one of the residents and goes into her apartment, and she makes a comment about white people not usually being there for good reasons, usually just police and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think that really goes to speak about what we're dealing with in society, and that things that are happening are not a 2020 issue.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's very fitting. I didn't pick that out purposely to reflect anything that's happening today, because this has been happening for a long time.
Yes, exactly.
And I think it's a very interesting urban legend, right? So it's kind of this belief that Candyman can be anywhere. You know, it doesn't matter if you're parking at some certain area or you go to Sleepy Hollow. You know, you're not babysitting. You can look in the mirror and say Candyman 5 times. And I'll be honest with you, I would never do that. I've never looked in the mirror and said Bloody Mary. I've never said Candyman. I just don't want to chance it.
Well, funny story, because I have done this, and well, I'm just gonna I guess everyone's just gonna know my crazy lifestyle. But this is probably about 15, maybe, I'd say probably about 16 years ago or so. I was over at my buddy's house. We took a hit of acid, and we were watching some scary movie. I forget what it was at the time, but he told me, "Hey, you should go in my bathroom with the lights off and say Candyman 5 times." And I'm like, "Oh my God, that's hilarious. Let's do it." I went in there and turned the lights off, and I did it. But by the time I got to the 4th and 5th time of saying his name, I actually started getting scared. Like, I actually was like, because of the drugs I was on, I was starting to hallucinate that something was moving behind me, that there was something in the shadows that shouldn't have been there. And my friend's outside the bathroom laughing his ass off because he can hear me like freaking out in the bathroom while I'm doing this.
Yeah, see, I wouldn't even do that. I don't need to be on acid.
You're right. I probably wouldn't have done it when I was sober, but being on acid, I'm just like, oh, that sounds like fun.
You know, and so did you get to the 5th one?
I did.
Is that who's behind you right now?
Oh, God.
Anyway, I think it's a really smart urban legend.
It is.
And yes, even though, you know, people can argue that there's some, you know, racial commentary there, or that there's not. I'm not there to argue either side. I think that this article that Rolling Stone published, and we'll include it in our notes, I think it presents a very good argument that there is. But I think that urban legend is transferable to anywhere and any place. And that's what makes it so scary.
Yes, it absolutely does.
Even though I don't have it in here, technically I just realized so's The Ring.
Yeah.
With the videotape, right? That you watch that videotape and in 7 days that you die. And I remember like watching the film with The Ring, and my coworker, her son's like a real horror lover. So they watched the Rings, the most recent Rings, and they show the video in it. And when the video ended, he texted one of his friends to call the house.
Nice.
And whisper 7 days. Is that not the funniest shit you've ever heard?
Oh, that is hilarious.
This kid's 12.
Oh my gosh, that's even better.
Right? So anyway, it's the idea that it can be effective anywhere, which leads to our next movie that you and I both watched, which was basically the 2000s throwing up in a movie.
Yep, so was.
Called Chain Letter from 2010. So first of all, I got to get a little bit of joking out of this movie. So, oh my God, Scott, like it had every trope character from the 2000s.
Oh, it's
like
so
rip off 2000 movie, like songs that I had never even heard, but totally sounded like from 2010. The fashion, that everybody having a cell phone. Like, have you not seen things where like cell phones? I got a cell phone. Everyone, I have a cell phone. Hey, by the way, do you want to see my cell phone?
Yeah, like here, like you know how bad cell phones are. Cell phones are bad. And oh, look how popular all you kids are on your phones all the time.
Everyone's at phone, email, instant message, games. Like it was like.
It was so like that era.
Oh my God. And it was just over the top. It was over the top of like 2000.
It so was. I was in tears laughing at some of the stuff because I'm like, yeah, this is like one of those bands that was probably made for this movie, but that band is like a band that I've heard before. And
Oh my God. Like, and it just sounded like every typical song. Like,
yeah,
that you could, it was like mix of like Fall Out Boy, Blink 182, Good Charlotte, Simple Plan. Like, it was just, anyway, now that we got that out of our way. Oh, and the people were like 30 playing like 15-year-olds. It was like you and me pretending to be high school students.
oh, it so was.
But anyway, the movie. So now that we're done making fun of it, the movie premise isn't horrible. So the film is about 6 friends who are stalked by a murderer that uses chain letters to kill them if they don't pass on the chain letter to 5 people. I hate chain letters. I also hate I hate when people tag me in Facebook statuses of like, I've been challenged to post 10 albums that are really important to me. I challenge you.
Yeah,
I really hate that shit.
yeah, I can't stand doing that. I did it for a while with those like challenges, but like yeah, chain letters I always ignored, and like I get ones, and the chain letters like still to this day exist because you get them in Facebook messages now from people like, send this to 10 people and you'll be very lucky for the rest of your day or blah blah blah. I'm like,
oh my gosh, totally right. So in this movie, the chain letter is send this to people or something will happen to you. So some people do and some people don't. And the ones that don't, they get killed. Now they don't get killed by a supernatural entity. They get killed by a specific person.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's based on the idea. So the urban legend is chain letters is a message that attempts to convince the person receiving it to make a number of copies and pass them on. So kind of like the ring, I guess you could say, with the videotape. And the chain, is a growing pyramid, right? So it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It's usually used for emotional manipulation stories, get rich quick pyramid schemes, exploitation of superstition. They were sent by mail. I remember when like you would get mail chain letters and you would be like, pass on to 5 of your friends. I'm like, oh my God. Like that was such a chick thing. I don't know if dudes did that, but like
I've never received them, but I did like read books like Christopher Pike had a chain letter book, and that was like one like people would get the chain letter in the mail and they'd have to pass it on, or something like a supernatural entity would attack them.
I'll be honest, it's the one thing I've never done. I have never passed on a chain letter. I think they're stupid. I thought they were stupid when I was younger. And I think it's the only urban legend I don't subscribe to. But this movie for 2010, probably straight to rental, was fine. Yeah. It's not, I wouldn't pay for it. We watched it on someone's Plex. So yeah, if you really are interested, I don't know, maybe Google it.
Right.
Find it.
Watch a trailer or something first.
Watch a trailer. I will give them credit though for really trying to deal with the whole technology issue, and using cell phones as that everyone is connected, everything is connected, and even the logic they use about, well, how would they get my address? Well, everything's connected back to your VIN number, which goes to your billing company. Like there was some logic that they did interject into the film that was good enough as to why this was happening to them.
Yep, it definitely was.
Right, but it definitely was a good way to bring in the modern day urban legend. And the final one that I will talk about today is The Forest in 2016. And this movie was a very hard movie for me to watch. I remember when it came out, and for listeners of this show, if I haven't fully shared it before, I have a very hard time talking about suicide. I have a very hard time understanding it. I don't judge people that have gone down that road, because all I can think is the pain must have been so bad that it's the only way to end it.
Yep.
But I have a really hard time with it. A really, really hard time with suicide and the thoughts of it. So this movie is about a young woman who travels to the, I'm not going to say this right. I feel like you're better at pronouncing this shit than I am.
The Okigahara.
Perfect, thank you. Forest. So I'm just going to call it the Suicide Forest for the sake of pronunciation, to find her sister. And the majority of the story is set around the Suicide Forest, which is northwest base of Mount Fuji in Japan. So it's a very popular destination. A lot of people have heard of it before. It's also known as the Sea of Trees, and it's a very common area. It's very beautiful, but people do go there to seek solitude and at times also engage in suicidal activities. So this movie is based upon that, so much so that I feel like the movie was meant to explore that that's what happens, to kind of like pull the Band-Aid off and probably do some exploitation as well. But they have a lot of suicide support signs throughout the forest and all that other kind of jazz. So this woman goes to look for her twin and goes into the forest, and a lot of paranormal things happen to her. It's actually a very, very good ghost story.
Okay.
I would say that is it the best ghost story in the entire world? No. I did pay to watch it, and I don't regret paying for it. I do think it was worth the $3.99 that I paid for the rental. I don't know how someone from Japan would feel about this. I don't
Right.
know if they would feel like I think that they did have a lot of authenticity. Like, it was filmed at the forest, like it was filmed there. Like, they did go to the, like, I don't know if it was the scenes were in the actual forest, but they did film it outside of the forest, and they did show some scenes like that. But yeah, it definitely is an area where people do go and they kill themselves, and it's believed that their ghosts and stuff like that haunt the forest, and that they will encourage others to do the same. And
Yeah,
that the
because
forest can play games on your mind and stuff.
I have actually heard of that that forest before this movie had come out too. Like, it just because I had a couple of friends that were into the Japanese culture and took a lot of like history classes and stuff and knew about this.
Well, they do annual body searches all the time. They've stopped reporting on numbers since 2011 because they felt like they were just promoting people going to this forest to commit suicide. But yeah, it's a really interesting movie, and even though this is obviously situational based, it does talk about that urban legend and that kind of myth around suicide. And I think that that's still an area that most of us don't really understand.
Right.
And it's a very sad area, and a lot of people are uncomfortable talking about it. I know for me, I'm uncomfortable talking about it, which is why I pushed myself to watch this movie and talk about it in this podcast, because if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I thought that it's a, maybe some of the listeners have better insight than I do. I do think the seclusion of the forest, and I think your mind can play tricks on you. And I also do believe in ghosts, and I do believe that if someone dies in peril, they may walk this earth still in a form. So I could believe that that could happen to somebody. They could be in the forest already, not in the best state of mind, and perhaps be visited by an entity. People can think I'm crazy, and that's fine, or that I don't know what I'm talking about, but I do believe in that.
Yep. And I am pretty much right there with you.
Yeah, I would not go into this forest. Let's put.
No, I would not chance it.
I would not go into the forest. Did not happen at all.
And there was a couple movies that I was going to bring up that I watched that had urban legends tied to them as well. So the movies I wanted to bring up were one that was from 1983 called Nightmares. It is divided into 4 separate independent films originally made as a television pilot. Nightmares begins with Terror in Topanga, a story about a young woman who goes out one night to buy a pack of cigarettes, knowing full well that the infamous Canyon Killer is on the loose. And sure enough, a subtly menacing store clerk begins to loom large in the woman's journey. So once again, that gas station story from Urban Legends, the man in the backseat type story. Then there was the second story, which is Bishop of Battle, which is a sequence with an animation that details the saga of a video game champion who comes up against a supernatural opponent, which I've seen that in multiple horror movies too, where like especially in the 80s, getting sucked into an arcade cabinet and like actually being in the game or part of
that was an Afraid of the Dark episode too.
Yep. Which I'll say, Afraid of the Dark is a great series that talks about a lot of urban legends as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Then the third vignette in this was The Benediction, which is about a priest who gives up on his faith and takes off down the highway only to be confronted with a demonic minivan and good reasons for remaining a believer, which, once again, movies and urban legends always talked about this ghost car or devil car. Like Christine was inspired by that by Stephen King. Then there is the last story, The Night of the Rat, which has the rodent that ate Manhattan, looming large over the home of a young couple, but never fear, the husband is biased enough to handle anything, or so he thinks. And that one, yep, just like the rumors of the gargantuan rats that live in cities and the sewers of New York and the streets and all that. And then this one has a lot of films that kind of dive into this type of urban legend, and it is called Antrim from 2019. It is a feature-length film shot in the late 1970s and is said to be cursed. In 1988, a movie theater in Budapest that was screening the film burnt to the ground, killing the 56 people who were in attendance. This incident followed the inexplicable deaths of a number of film festival programmers that had received Antrim as a submission and died shortly after watching it. These events have created a belief that watching Antrim will kill you, and has successfully tracked down this company successfully tracked down a sole copy of the film and packaged it for public release. The film is about a young boy and a girl that enter a forest and dig a hole to hell. As one programmer observed from Antrim, you don't watch the film watches you.
Is the forest the Japanese one, or is it just a random forest?
It's just a random forest.
Interesting.
And I think this is a film that was actually made last year, but like they were trying to play it up to be like made in the 70s, and like they actually have like 20 minutes before the film actually starts of this documentary of people being interviewed about the film and like building up this myth and legend of it.
Oh, smart.
And other movies that kind of tie along that would be John Carpenter's Cigarette Burns from the Masters of Horror episode, like about a cursed film, The Ring.
Yep.
Like, there's a lot of these, just like also The Hills Run Red. That one's another one that like these cursed films that something bad will happen if you watch them or try to find them.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one, unfortunately, has a tragic tale along with the movie itself. So I'll talk about the movie first and then a little bit of the tragic tale. It's called Toad Road from 2013. Young James kills time with his small-town druggy friends, engaging in excessive chemical intake until he meets sweet new arrival Sarah. But just as James wants to abandon the narcotics life, Sarah wants him to take her further into mind-altering experimentation. And she also wants him to introduce her to the sinister local legend of Toad Road, a spot deep in the forest that is apparently home to the 7 gates of hell. Real story behind this is the actress that played Sarah died either it was shortly after or during the end of filming from doing drug overdose on LSD.
Oh man, that's sad.
Yeah, so it's just kind of like, but it's just like those types of urban legends that, you know, you hear about something kind of like what I had with my friends that I told you about, the Wakalar in Montrose, this random beast that we hear about and want to find out what it is. So you go out there and try finding it. And unfortunately, the story, bad things happen.
Well, it's like when they, even though the Blair Witch Project isn't realistic, it's also the belief of that too, right? It's
right.
Yeah, trying to go out and then tragedy happening because something happens, whether it's supernatural or real. I guess you could say, based in reality. That's interesting. Very cool.
But yeah, I just wanted to bring those up because I'd watched them and thought like I couldn't find like an exact spot to put them in our topic, but I was like they needed to be mentioned.
Yeah, and I hope we've given you guys, as June is among us and campfires are happening and bars aren't open and well, they're getting open slowly depending where you live, rest and theaters, but we don't have any new releases. So if you're looking for some campfires tales, we got some urban legends that you can take a look at.
Yeah, exactly. And so we will go on to our final segment of the night, which is the Out of the Dark. And on this Out of the Dark segment, we kind of talked a little bit about it on our last episode, but we're going to talk a little more in detail about the Horrorhound Virtual Film Festival. Because we watched a bunch of them on Sunday together, like on the last day that it was airing. So we got at least some movies we can talk about together.
Yeah, and I'm not going to go over them in great detail. Like I think just generally, I watched some. I think it's been a while now. Wednesday night I watched some, and I feel like as the film festival went on, they got better. The good ones were saved for, not that they were bad, but maybe the more polished filmmakers were saved for the Sunday night ones, and Saturday probably over, Wednesday. I watched one that was okay. I think I watched Imagine a World on that one. I can't even remember what Staglet was about. Maybe you watched that one.
Yeah, the Staglet one I cannot remember, but Imagine the World was that one about the internet door-to-door salesman. Yes,
that was the one. So that was on Sunday.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm thinking of another one then. But the Imagine a World was a Toronto one. It was filmed in Toronto. It was by a Toronto filmmaker. And the filmmakers were actually on, talking in some cases, in some of the, there was a side chat. There was a chat room and then there's a side chat. And there was one point where I think Scott had a hard time getting in.
Mm-hmm.
And I was chatting with, I think it was the person that created Imagine a World.
Yeah, it was.
And I really liked Hide and Seek. I thought that one was really cool too. Dylan was really cool. Like, these were short films. They were maybe 20 minutes in length. I think Tix was even shorter. It was like
Tix was like 3
minutes.
4 minutes. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it was really, really short. Hide and Seek was a cool little concept. I would have liked to see that one as a bigger film.
Yeah.
I think that would have been a great opening to a ghost story film, in my opinion anyway.
I think so as well, yeah, because like that's what I like about a lot of these short films is like some of these, you never know, we may see them become full-length feature films down the road, like because that was, what was it, the movie Lights Out? That was based off of a short film.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, so like there's chance for these to eventually get there, and I think with the virtual film fest, like this is a way to help it, like we were kind of talking last time, help these little directors, like with these little films, get noticed even more widespread, because they're not just at one festival, they're being shown to anybody that signed up for this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought that all of the films that we watched on Sunday were good. I didn't think any of them were bad.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was worth the money. I finally got my credit card statement in, so it cost me $24.
Okay, so $6 cheaper.
Oh yeah, than like the 30 I thought it might be. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was just me doing a guesstimation with the dollar. So yeah, it was only 24, which isn't too bad, and it was worth it. You know, I would definitely recommend people doing this again. I think that, you know, some people might look at stuff like this and go, well, you don't know what's going to be there, and the films are good. Like, if you watch like on the weekend, they're great. And for $24, we watched a bunch of short films. I saw 2 full like feature ones. The one I didn't care for too much was Stay Alive. I thought was really good. Like, it was entertaining, and I really enjoyed it. So I hope they do more stuff like this post-COVID, whatever, because I think it's a great way to get movies exposed. And I have no regrets. It was something that I'm going to probably, when I look back at 2020, going to be something that I'm really glad that I did.
Right. And I'm glad that you and I did this together too. Like,
yeah,
gave us something fun to talk about. And it's, like the $15, like you were saying, like someone said, you never know what you're going to get. That's kind of the fun of it.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't know what you're going to get. And it's not a lot of money to pay.
No.
For the experience that you get, to be quite honest with you. You go to the movie theater, you're dropping $24 Canadian anyway.
Yeah, for one freaking movie.
Or for popcorn and drinks.
Right.
Right? So like I remember I sat outside and I was watching this, and I enjoyed it. Like, it was a solid, I think we started watching at 6 around there.
Yeah.
And we watched it right till 9, and for 3 hours straight, we got a bunch of short films in, feature like the presentation. The chat room on the little side, or the chat group on the side, was really cute. People just chiming in their opinions and stuff. I enjoyed it. I would do it again. I hope there's other ones that do it again this year, because I'll definitely sign up and do it.
Yep, same here. Like, I'm going to be keeping my eye out on all these conventions now to see if they announce something like this from here on out.
Yeah, we were talking, we had a little quiz night last night with some friends, and we were talking about conventions and stuff, and some of these guys were sharing their horror merch and stuff that they had, and it was really cool. You know, I think that it's fun to connect with people that like the same thing you like.
It definitely is.
It's enjoyable to sit down and, you know, shoot the shit, for lack of a better word, with people that are into the same thing you're into. And Scott has an amazing horror collection. He has posters and action figures and a life-size pinhead. Yeah. And among other things, he has a huge collection of physical media as well. And it's great that you can show that to people who care. You know, like,
right.
You know, the average person would look at a Nightbreed poster and be like, wow. Like,
right, exactly.
Or horror fans, like, oh, wow, that's so cool. Or, wow, you got that signed by whoever it may be, like Jason, or I don't know, Jason's not right, because there's lots of people that played him. But, like, it's just a cool thing to have. Like, Scott's favorite movie is Gremlins. And last night we were, you know, playing this trivia with someone else who really likes Gremlins, and he was showing his Gremlin connection. And I think that's cool. Like, I think it's nice to not feel like you're a freak or whatever for liking things. It's nice to talk with other people that like the same movies, and being part of this film festival is just like another little small community.
Right. That is a great way of putting it too. Yeah. 'Cause, like, you know, not many, I think there was 100 or so of us, and that was about it.
Yeah. And, you know, really, people were much more proactive. They were making proactive comments, and it's just cool. It's cool to be part of something like that. I dig it. I like being part of things where other people like stuff, the same stuff that I do. It's unfortunate that all of us live so far spread out, but
Right.
that's what technology has allowed us to do. You know, as much as we look at the chain letter movie and the harm that comes with technology, I guess you could say, it also has allowed us to connect with each other. So yeah, I would say to people, if you're unsure about virtual film festivals, don't be. You know,
Yeah.
it's worth your time, it's worth your money. You know, for $15 or $24 Canadian, like, come on.
It's
you know,
worth
like
taking the jump.
Yeah, like it's not like you're paying $100 and I can be like, oh yeah, but like it's worth it. It's enjoyable, and you're truly supporting the community.
Yep.
You know, you're not just being like, I support independent horror. Like, you actually are supporting independent horror. So I think
this
that's
is like the most independent that it gets.
right. Like, I think that's the difference. So that's all I really have to say on that. I don't know if you want to add more to
No,
that.
I'll say you pretty much summed it up perfectly. But yeah, I will just say, like, yeah, if these ever come around again, please just like I will share them every time I see them on our Facebook page. So like, hopefully more people will jump on board and check these out. Because yeah, even if it's just a bunch of bad movies, like it's $15 to watch a ton of different movies.
And I don't think they'll all be bad.
No, and none of them will all be bad.
Like, that's impossible. Like, there's just so many movies and so much like taste that you could have. Not all of them are going to be bad. I think
you're gonna.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
I'll say you're just gonna have some hit or misses.
Yeah, or like ones that fit for you. Like, Scott and I have different tastes, right? Like, there's movies that he may be like, oh man, that movie is so good, and I'm like, man, like, but none of them were bad. None of the ones we watched on Sunday night were bad.
Right.
None of them were bad. None of them were like, oh my god, what a fucking waste. They were all good. You know, it's just on your scale of good where they would stand, but entertaining, worth your time.
Yep, absolutely. And so thank you all for joining us on this wonderful journey on episode 9.
I guess the last thing we'll add is that our next episode will be episode 10.
I was just about to say, actually, like our first milestone, we have made it. And we haven't really decided on what our topic will be just yet, but like we usually do, we'll just surprise you a couple days before we release the episode.
I don't know what we're doing.
we plan spontaneously.
Yeah, it's like we're trying to make ourselves sound mysterious. Really, we're just like, I don't know. We have a list of topics. We actually just, not that I don't want to look like we're not prepared at all. We have a list of topics.
Yeah.
And we kind of just float back and forth. And obviously, as time has gone on and as you get more knowledgeable with your podcasting, our topics have changed. So it's true. We have no idea what we're going to do next. So.
Yep. So it'll be interesting and a surprise to us as well.
Everyone will be surprised.
Yes. Surprise. So until next time, unpleasant dreams.
Unpleasant dreams.